bull almost do his thing.
Okay, we are now on the record.
Okay, we're back on the record, and looks like we did that at 12:34. So we're going to go ahead and hit move on to 7, which is consumer equitability, right? And item 7A is a request permission to adopt national standards for fuels and lubricants and to change fees for certain services under NAC 581. This will be Bart O'Toole. Go ahead, Bart.
Bart O'Toole for the record. I just need to clarify that. This one's for informational only. Jim is actually as a state sealer, is actually the authority on this one. So I'm just giving you guys this for information on A.
So we've approved to go to workshop and hearing on that one as an informational item.
And if you want any further information on that, I'm more than happy to
And that attachment is on right under A, NAC 581.
Anybody wish to delay the meeting more than it already has been, or would you like to? Boy, what a bad crowd. Item 7B. Oh,
Right here.
Paul? Where? Paul, no?
I move that we approve this.
Well, we don't have to.
Hold on,
This
this is not an action item.
Oh, it's
Right,
not.
Yeah.
that's
not.
under the one of those
Oh,
that's
okay.
under the director's authority, so it goes through the same process, and then the director does the approval or
All
denial.
right.
Yeah,
We have a mixed bag. Of
it's pick and
authority.
choose government, kind of like it's
So does the
Federal level.
director have
he
authority
decides whether he wants to.
Correct.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Another example of that would be when we raise the pesticide registration fee. That's by statute under direct authority of the director.
But it does still have to go through that process.
Right. You still have to do workshop, you still have to
And
do hearing,
hearing.
take public comment, but then that's provided to the director, and then the director makes the call.
That's correct.
Okay.
All NRS 581's under the authority of the director.
If you ask why, I have no idea.
Okay. Well, nobody is going to ask why.
I guess.
Okay, hint, hint. 7B, request permission to submit a draft to LCB and then go to workshop and hearing to make update and cleanup changes to NAC 590, sections 050, 051, 52, 53, 54, 55, and 065. William Strajewski, Senior Petroleum Chemist. Bill?
For the record, Bill Strajewski. This action actually has 4 different parts to it. I won't go through 2 of those to speed things up unless I really need to. I did want to mention 2 of them though. One is that up until now we have had to label diesel pumps that they actually contain ultra-low sulfur diesel. And that was mandated by the EPA. In the fall, the EPA said, well, everything that's for sale road and off-road is going to be ULSD, so that's no longer necessary. However, I looked at our various regs and then asked Dennis to look also, and just sort of the way that we reference some documents, we needed to still label. And so I just want to add a line to 590 just saying it's no longer necessary to label that. That's easier than working around the various reference documents. For example, ASTM 975, which is the specification for diesel, that says they have to be labeled. Well, but that'll probably be changed in the future as well, but this is just to take care of that. Also, some of the board members who have been on the board for a while remember a few years ago that we added language to the various fuel sections that allowed us to, we used to reference specific versions of ASTM documents by year. And those become very outdated and you either, aren't referencing a good document or you have to go through updates all the time. And we put in language that said that it's approved unless within 120 days the Board of Agriculture takes action that we don't want to approve that version. You may recall that. We did everything except for aviation gas and jet fuel because uniquely that is not under the purview of the Board of Agriculture, it's under the purview of the state sealer. And so LCB wouldn't let us do that at that time. Now, with the state sealer's blessing, I would just like to add that same language that when new avgas updates come or jet fuel updates come, either we approve them or I ask you to not. And so the other two are just very much cleanup and updating things. And I'll take any questions if you have any.
Bill, I do
Mr.
have
Anderson.
a question. I thought we were trying to get away from the dates, and under 590.055, we refer to the 2014 annual book.
And
not
that is
refer
the
to
avgas
newest?
and jet fuel, correct?
I thought that one of the things we were doing was going towards the newest version or something
Right.
like that. Is that something we can't
That's what
say?
we did
Well-
in the manganese.
If you recall, when we did that though, we had to sort of set it to a date. So it's 2014 or maybe it's 2015 by the time we get this approved, and then forward from there.
Generally, what it says is the reference is 2014, but unless there's opposition, the newer standard will be adopted at X time. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, and if you look, for example, at the section underneath it, which is section 7 of this, but it has to do with gasoline spec, that one is pinned to the 2010 edition.
Okay.
But I think it's, the way that LCB had written the draft when we did it the first time, they just set it to current.
It's that
And
second
then moving-
statement, each new revision of that standard shall be deemed approved by the board.
Exactly, yeah.
With the 120 days.
But as it stands now, we're referencing the avgas and the jet fuel standards from 2002. So at least gets us within this decade.
We should go back to the 80s on avgas.
We still have lead in it.
Whatever for the best.
So it works good in your car too. I'm sorry,
We'll need a motion on B.
on B?
I move that we allow them to go to workshop and hearing on NAC 590, and do I need to name all of them?
Just as reference to 7B.
Yeah, so in accordance to 7B, the NAC sections that we have listed here.
Second.
Motion was made by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Mr. No. Any discussion? All of those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimous. Item 7B, request permission. C, thank you. Request permission to submit a draft to LCB and then go to workshop and hearing to add language to NAC 590.059 concerning labeling of 85 octane gasoline and renumber sections following. Again, William Krajewski. Billy?
And I'll try and make this brief as well, although this will take a little bit more discussion. So traditionally, ASTM has approved and even recommended the use of 85 octane gasoline as regular through the Intermountain West. If you go to Salt Lake City or Denver, Colorado, probably Utah at all, you'll see 85 as opposed to 87.
Idaho.
Idaho, at least sections of Idaho, that's right. And so the ASTM defined the section for Nevada as being north of the 38th parallel, and I apologize in advance for saying 38th parallel, it's the last time I will, and east of the 117th.
I wanted to leave it.
The 117th longitude, which is just west of Battle Mountain. 110. No, it's 117. And
I wouldn't argue, Bart.
110 is in California. But it's just west of Battle Mountain. Now historically, also in the state, and that predates me, we have had a loose hand on 85 octane if it's outside of that area. That wasn't a problem until really just the last few years, and it has kind of come to a head just in the last year or so, both with consumers and with other marketers who do not sell 85 and their regular is 87 octane. And with consumers who think that the regular that they're getting at such a good price is going to be 87, and they get to the pump and it's clearly labeled as 85, but they feel that that's being misrepresented. And the marketers, part of their issue is that, if a consumer goes on to Gas Buddy or another website like that gives you the cheapest gas prices, they're seeing regular for a price that's a dime cheaper than somewhere else, but it's not actually 87, it's 85. We attempted to add some language to correct this to the omnibus bill this spring, but it was struck before it got very far. And so I'd like to take care of that now. And we have basically two choices. Is either we can take a more rigid line on where 85 octane is available within those boundaries in the state, or add some language so that retailers who are selling 85 octane just outside of the area, bordered by the 117th and the 38th, would refer to 85 octane as economy. And so part of the reason for this is that at least one retailer who sells 85 octane sells both 85 and 87.
Both as regular.
Both as regular at the moment. And so, this would maintain it as a viable for-sale product, but differentiate it from everything else in the market that's 87 octane. And I will say that this is an ongoing, 85 octane fuel is an ongoing issue with ASTM, and at some point it may go away entirely, because it was originally introduced during the time of carbureted automobiles. But right now the oil companies and the oil companies are at loggerheads, and so it's at a stalemate. So this is at least a short-term solution. Yes, Paul, sorry.
Yeah. Bill, have you actually had complaints from consumers?
We have. And from marketers.
Marketers. And kind of giving you guys a little bit of background from a marketing point of view, the 85 octane is more competitively priced, and really what we've recommended in the past is you just make sure that you're clearly labeling that as 85. But think of all the labels on a fuel dispenser. I mean, does everyone actually look at all the things on there? And especially if it's the same station you've been going to, they could have switched that 85, switched it from an 87 to an 85, and you wouldn't even notice it. I think this is one that it's going to be a pretty hot topic for marketers and oil companies and everyone in between. But I do think this is something we do need to go to workshop and hear.
It reminds me of the manganese discussion, and it's a pet peeve of mine because I didn't like that idea at all, mainly to protect the consumer. Again, both the owner's manual of automobiles, manganese, stay away from it. Also with fuel, all our 87 is one of the minimum octane ratings they recommend goes in cars. So that's a GM product, by the way. Sorry, I've never looked at a Ford product owner's manual, or they can run anything. Yeah.
We are getting several
safflower oil
from gas stations that are across the street from the ones that are selling the 85 one. I cannot compete with this gas station because I'm selling 87 octane as regular and he's selling 85 octane as regular, and so there's a competition there. So we're not opposed to the 85 octane, but we would like to name it something so you know what you're getting.
Clarification, why does the one that's marketing 87 not just turn around and market 85 in a competitive market?
You mean by purchase 85?
Well, they're lodging the complaint that the guy across the street's selling 85 as regular, and they're selling 87 as regular. Rather than complaining, I mean, I'm just trying to...
Well, I'm going to speculate there.
I could answer that, because it could be that they either have a supply agreement or they actually have a contract by brand. some brands won't let you sell an 85 octane.
So they're
Yeah,
locked
you
into
can't
what
find a
they're at. They're
Chevron.
held hostage.
Yeah.
that says 85,
Right.
Jim. It's hence your Maverick Jackson battle going on. Maverick will do 85 in Boise, but a Jackson's, they sell name brand fuel.
Using the term economy is out of the ASTM. Is how it is anything less than 85. It's right around there. They break those down to premium, mid-grade, regular, and then economy is in the nomenclature, but it doesn't quite match the 85 octane.
In weights and measures handbook 130.
Okay.
So regular, under the regular class, they do define that as 87?
They define it as 87. However, in mountainous areas, mountainous 4 and 5 or 5 and 6,
Again, here,
it's 85.
regular would be 85.
But we don't subscribe to, or we don't adopt that section of the handbook, so the state of Nevada can sell 85 throughout the state as regular. Does that make any sense?
Makes perfect sense to me.
I think you're the only one.
I motion
Paul,
that,
it wouldn't matter what it says. The whole world needs to be all 87. You're gonna sell it no matter what.
I motion that we approve going to workshop and hearing for NAC 590.059.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Anderson made the motion, seconded by Mr. Spratling. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, all of those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimous. Seven D. Right? Request permission to submit a draft to LCB and then go to workshop and hearing to update and rewrite language related to antifreeze in NAC 590 sections 10 through 35. Again, Mr. Strudowski.
And again, this will only be just a couple of seconds of explanation. The antifreeze section of chapter 590 is set up nothing like any of the fuel sections. And I just wanted to bring it into some sort of regularity, the way that it references documents and the way that it deals with how we handle samples and results and so on, and update some things that are just egregiously out of date as well. That's all.
Do have a question for you, Bill. On the one thing I've never noticed before is the fire extinguishing agents. Is this new to us? Has it been in there before?
Since I'm pulling it out, I'm going to say it's been in there. Oh, that really has nothing to do with us. It's just that I have to name the actual volume of the ASTM library that the coolant specs are in, and it's kind of a grab bag volume that has things including fire extinguishing agents.
Okay, so it was always there, but it wasn't
Actually, they
spelled
changed.
out?
No, actually, in the old one, it was only engine coolants.
Okay.
So they must have combined some volumes. My guess is that almost nobody buys the hardcover volumes now. They're probably on CDs, and they were probably sending out CDs that were only a quarter full. And so they threw a bunch of volumes together so they could fill them up when they sent them out.
So what they're going to be doing here is, I thought you guys used to just test automotive or take.
We are. I'm just telling. That's just the name of the volume.
Okay.
That has nothing to do with our program. It's just a volume.
It's referencing the standards versus identifying a new authority. It's just saying the standard's located in this one.
Okay.
Yeah,
I wasn't.
And we're always, we always have to say, that it's available for purchase and from where and so on. And so if you see, volume 15.05 used to be just engine coolants and that was it. And now they've tacked these other parts onto it.
Okay.
That's the title of that volume.
Motion?
Motion that we approve going to workshop and hearing to make changes to NAC 590 sections 010 through 035.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Anderson made the motion, seconded by Mr. No. Any discussion? All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimous.
Much.
And board update, Mr. O'Toole.
I'll be very quick. We implemented a new livestock scales procedure this year where we shifted it to the right starting in July versus March. And we've had great success with that using seasonal employees as the ride-alongs, and also pushing that to the right is going to help the sellers meet the requirement of the internet sales. In Western Nevada, we're down to 6 scales, and I know they're just finishing up here in Northern Nevada with about 24 failures this year. So it was a great year for livestock scales. In the spring, we're going to implement NIST-sponsored training. It's going to be in Reno versus Vegas because we're not sure how the headquarters is. It's going to train all 15 weights and measures inspectors in package checking as well as price verification. It's also going to give room to bring in 5 additional out-of-state folks for the training, and this is a no cost to us. NIST sends the trainers, and when us, all we have to do is supply the building, and they take care of the rest. So that's a good thing to us. And I'm going to continue to move that through over the next few years. I'm going to skip the reorganization of the southern area and go to the petroleum lab. We're ready to start oil testing. We're only waiting on the purchase card just in case, because we're going to be pulling several gallons of oil from these vendors, and that can come up to by $13 a gallon. We expect someone to ask for payment, which is allowed in the NRS, so we just need a payment method on that, and we'll go forward with that. Metrology, we received our new 600 kilogram mass comparator, replaced the Russell equal arm balance that was put in the 60s. However, when the factory rep came and set it up, it had a load cell problem, so it got shipped back to Germany. The one caveat of that is that's going to push our certification of our metrology lab a little bit further to the right, just because we need that as part of the certification.
So instead of a true balance beam, you're talking about electronic load cells?
Yeah.
And there's no concern about problems down the road with electronic load cells?
Well, because of the traceability on NIST, we send our standards out to be to NIST to be checked, and then they send them back. And every 10 weights that go on that has to be checked against our state standards. So I'm going to say no. Okay.
No problem.
I have faith.
Well, I think this is consistency with the rest of the states in the country. I mean, we're actually one of the later to
We are.
swap.
So we
this
can all
out.
go down the drain together and stuff?
Well, the problem was we weren't able to get the old balance beam serviced, which is the same problem that we had with the Las Vegas one, and why it's been out of commission, out of compliance for I think 4 years. And it's heartbreaking because it's a beautiful piece of equipment. It shocked my system to walk back there last week and it was gone, because I didn't realize it had already been shuttled. And yeah, I mean, where industry is and the capacity to maintain its certification is basically what's pushed us this direction.
And I believe that with the traceability that goes back to NIST and then further goes back to the international standards, that we're going to mitigate any problems that come up with the electronic load cells.
Okay.
That was a real bureaucrat right there, wasn't it? Let's see, both metrologists have completed all 3 of the NIST required seminars to become metrologists, and now they're working on their practical problems. We also have NIST has a contract with Oregon, and they've sent their metrologists down to work with our metrologists for the next week on their metrology problems. So we're hopeful, and we're kind of at NIST's leisure to get recertified, and but things are looking forward. And the last thing I want to talk about that is reclassification of metrologists. We've been working very hard to reclassify metrologists, where we have 3 tiers of metrologists. This is going to alleviate any problem with metrologists leaving and not having someone to backfill that. And So I think it's gonna be a good program. Been working with state classification about 6 months on that, and that's moving forward. We'll have metrologists 1s, 2s, and 3. The last thing is, and this is a good thing, is we have started recalibrating our own in-house weights, so we're catching up on those. Even though we don't have NIST certification, we're confident that we're getting and this is part of their practice on getting the NIST certification. Any questions?
Any questions for Bart? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
And we were able
Good job,
to,
Bill.
yeah, thank you too, Bill. We got through this item number 7, and it looks like we have company. Jason, can you hear us?
I can,
Jason?
Chairman. I can,
Oh.
Chairman Sticks. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can, Jason. Thank you. Right on time, 1 o'clock, and I'll just give everybody a little bit of a background. I asked the director to invite Jason King, our state engineer, to discuss issues with water based on the drought forum a couple weeks ago. But at the same time, Ramona Morrison asked for a legal clarification, I think was headed towards Dennis, but I wanted to keep B on even though Ramona's not here because I needed a refresher, and I think there's some new board members here that need a refresher when we visited this idea before. What's the classification of a wild horse? And we'll have Jason explain that when we go into it. By the way, we've also gone to legislature in the past already, if you guys don't remember, with Pete Gokachia helping us, and we got completely shut down on giving a classification to help Jason. So we didn't get anywhere there. So basically what I wanted Jason to do is visit with you folks at the drought forum that was held at the Board of Agriculture. I was asked to speak on behalf of the board, or as the chairman. I've been asked to go back for cattlemen to go to the summit. And some of the issues that popped up in the forum, these are issues that have been rearing their ugly heads, hiding in the closets for years now, is the issue of that surface water, groundwater. And I do not believe that, especially the water users of our state, are in complete denial all over the state on that relationship. And Jason is getting a lot of negativity. His office probably has some blame, but it's not him. There's past state engineers in the past. I don't know. We don't know what goes on in that office, what they see all the time. But the thing that bothers me is the fact that we're overpumping our groundwater basins, and there's not enough water going in to replace them. And it's that simple. If we look along the tributaries of the Humboldt and the Walker, both of them, and the quandary we're in now, and I said it in my very first statements to Jason and the group the other day, is will Nevada water law survive? Is it what it was meant to be when it was originally adopted? Because we got lots of, let's go to the legislature and change this and change that, but yet the legal shenanigans that can go on, we could be in court for years, and it leaves Jason's hands tied in the meantime till the courts decide what's appropriate. And that's what I'm concerned about. If there's a problem in a basin, Jason needs to have the authority and use those laws to curtail it if it needs to be. And that's where we're at right now. So Jason, basically, if you want to give a spiel, what I wanted to see is if you could ask the board if there was something you thought that this Board of Agriculture could help in the future. So go ahead, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chairman Sticks, and good afternoon, board members. Maybe I'll start out just by saying in this past session in 2015, our office did introduce a couple of bills that we really felt were value added to the statute. Really thought that they were tools that would help us throughout the state, and we were unsuccessful in both attempts. There was a third bill basically that we co-sponsored with Senator Gokachia on the filing of vested claims that I really thought, again, was a fairly benign bill, but again, it didn't go anywhere. And I've been working for the division now for 25 years, and I've been to a lot of sessions. And it's getting tougher, in my opinion, to get water bills approved. And that's not to say I haven't been on the other side where I've actually tried to kill some bills that I didn't think were value added. In any case, obviously it gets everybody's attention, and we do want to be very careful about how we tweak the water law. And Chairman Sticks, I would tell you that I do think our water law is going to survive. I think the prior appropriation system is going to survive, but it's not going to look like what it looks today. We've all heard from, I think you've all heard about what is potentially being proposed in Diamond Valley from Professor Michael Young out of Australia, to maybe look at a groundwater management plan based on the Australian methodology. Again, I was the biggest skeptic in the room when I heard Mr. Young talk about it, but it wasn't the craziest idea I ever heard, and I think we ought to give it a chance in Diamond Valley. So I'm going to back up a little bit. Our water law has served us well. I've said this before, we have 256 groundwater basins. I'm not going to talk about the surface water right now, but truly, for most of those 256 groundwater basins, our water law has served us very well. But there are, let's call them 20 basins that I would consider are severely over-appropriated. And those right now, especially in times of drought, which exacerbates all the issues, we need to figure out how to get those basins back in balance. And we need tools, because really our only tool right now is to regulate by priority, which we call the scorched earth scenario. We just go in and we cut off everybody junior in time to the perennial yield, and then those senior to that amount get their full use. So that's what's available to us now in statute. So you could help us, the Ag Board and the ag industry could help us in, I would not ask you to support anything that I thought was what I consider to be poor water law, and you'll have to make that decision for yourself. But we certainly can use your support in upcoming sessions if we try to avail ourselves of other tools that help us administer and regulate water without just cutting off the most junior water right and calling it good. So next session, I know we're going to take another run at a couple of bills. And if you find that you can support those, then obviously we would greatly appreciate that. We hope that our office will do a better job before next session in trying to get the draft language out to everybody so they can be vetted and we can actually have a good bill draft by the time we get to the session, which is something we weren't able to do this last time. So that's a very long-winded answer. Chairman Sticks to we have a good water law. There are certain areas that need to be updated to a 21st century use of our water. If you find value in bill drafts that we are proposing, all support that we can get from you would be greatly appreciated. Maybe I'll just leave it at that, Chairman Sticks, and answer any other questions about anything else you'd like to talk about.
Well, Jason, I guess to make clear my concern about Nevada water law surviving is I'm concerned, can we ever get at a point through the legislature, and that's twofold, by the way, and you spoke about it. One, can you even get the law changed, which we found out is very hard to do. And even if you could change it, your hands are tied if a group of farmers bands together and gets legal representation. It can be tied up to a point where, these things are changing all the time. We need to address it immediately. There could be some irreparable harm done to the groundwater basin. So I guess my biggest question there is, do you see tweaks in the legislature, if we can get it done, that could help you administer it? Or are we going to always be in this continuous cycle of you being sued and your determination being overturned?
Thank you for that clarification, Chairman Sticks. It's the former. I do think that the more things that we can get in statute, and we may have to go to regulations, which our agency is not heavy on regulations, but if we go to basin-specific regulations, I think then our decisions can be more bulletproof. Right now, we're trying a lot of things in a lot of different areas, whether it's the Humboldt River, surface water, groundwater, Smith and Mason Valley, the declining water table, what we have going on in Diamond Valley, Prump, we got domestic wells. The more things we can get in statute and regulations that we can point to, then it helps us to be defensible, and we don't have to be in court over every single thing. But you're exactly right. Right now, we are kind of pushing the envelope on the tools that are available to us, and it's being litigated, and it's problematic because it just plays itself out in the court, and we don't get to a final decision all the while. Pumping of an aquifer is going big guns, and we're seeing water level declines like we've never seen before. So I think that there has to be amendments and corrections and thinking outside the box, but it has to make it into the statute, into regulations. Otherwise, you're right, it'll be in front of the judge. But it can happen. It's tough. A lot of work and effort went into those two bills we tried to get passed this past session. And again, it didn't happen. So it takes a lot of manpower, and it takes a lot of support from other water professionals that think the bill is good.
Jason, the next one has to do with the team of Ritchie and Turnipseed back in the 90s when they closed the water basins. At that time, and I still think basically the Bible you have is the USGS perennial yield studies, which go back, I believe, to the 60s or 70s. But when they closed the basins based on those perennial yields, Jason, what's odd about that is there wasn't a huge scream. I mean, there was, but we didn't see the issue in the courts. Most of the communities went, okay, that's what we got to do. But it changed everything. I don't want anybody to misinterpret what happened there. There's water rights in the basins if you can get your hands on them and purchase them. What happened is they weren't going to allocate any more new permits in the groundwater basin. So I wanted to make that clear. So I just wanted to say, how is that going right now? Are the basins still basically closed?
Yes, and we continue to close more. And I will tell you that there are, I don't know what the number is, but there's a number of basins where we haven't actually issued an order that says this basin is closed. But practically speaking, we're not approving any new appropriations except for very de minimis amounts of water, like stock watering, maybe a small commercial. So even though there might not be an order out there for a certain basin, closing it down completely, when you look at how we're looking at any new appropriations, we've shut them down, and that's part of our plan too, is to at least get an order out on them, even though that's essentially what we're doing. But no, and I know everybody likes to throw rocks at the recon reports because they're old, but I've been on record saying really they're pretty good. They really are. When we get updated models for different systems, like the one we're pursuing in the Humboldt, like the one we did in the Walker, yes, part of that process is to update those water budgets to be more detailed and we hope more accurate than the recon reports of 40 or 50 years ago. So as we start looking at newer models in some of these basins, we're having those water budgets updated, so we're not looking at those recons necessarily. But again, those recon reports are pretty good.
Jason, when you drive the I-80 corridor and you make the turn around Button Point, there's 4 brand new pivots that just got put in between Button Point and Golconda. Brand new. I don't know if you know personally, but is the water from those coming from an existing right that was already out there on the books that just hadn't been used?
Chairman Six, that's my guess, but I don't know that for sure, but I'm going to look into that and I will shoot you an email that clears that up. But that would be my guess, is that it's an existing right that they're putting back into use.
Mr. Spratling.
Director King, this is Boyd Spratling, and I have a question about mining, dewatering, which has its own complications to a watershed, the volume of water that's pulled down in that Kona Depression. But now we're seeing as these mines are being played out and the water filling back into them, where do you see that complication going, where that water is essentially just sitting in those pits and is perhaps even drying up springs that are at the same level or even higher up the mountain from that, or lower down the mountain from that.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Spradlin. Well, clearly that is an issue that has been raised probably since 2011, and I know that the Nevada Mining Association is has been working with the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority about a couple of things that you've mentioned. Pit lakes, what about the evaporation off of those? Shouldn't they be required to have a water right associated with that evaporation? And again, I'm on record saying there's no argument from me that that is a consumptive use of water and it needs to be accounted for. In the bigger picture, we looked at what is the evaporation off of pit lakes statewide, and it was a very small amount, but nonetheless, that water should be accounted for probably through a permit through our office. The mines would have to come up with a water right for that evaporation, but it's a small amount of water. Now, you want to talk about, if part of your question is the filling up of the pit lakes, I've seen one report, and I think they talk about 1.5 million acre-feet of water is going to be required for filling of all of those pit lakes once they're completely excavated and then start filling back in. I mean, that is a large amount of water. It's a one-time filling. We haven't heard anything, to get to your question, Mr. Spradlin, I haven't heard any issues with springs drying up as a result of water going back into the pit lakes. We've actually had some springs dry up over the years as a result of mine dewatering, and those springs, those water right owners have been made whole through mitigation. But I haven't heard anyone say, my spring has gone dry as a result of the pit lake filling back up. But there's a lot of issues related to, you're right, to the pit lake fill up, to evaporation. We've all talked about temporary nature when those mining permits were issued. The expected mining life was 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, and here we are much further down the road. And do we need to take a relook at those applications and see how to move forward on those?
I think my concern is that the surface water users, once we realize or determine that there has been a negative effect on surface waters because of mining in general, dewatering, the entire picture, that's pretty tough to make whole if that spring is no longer flowing. And I don't know, I just don't, I guess maybe litigation or more regulation through your department or through your division is the way to look at that, but I think that fear and concern is out there for sure.
And if I may just add, so when I'm talking about some of the springs that we've seen either be diminished in flow or dry up, the mitigation is for a mine to actually drill them a well or haul water to mitigate that spring flow. So there are ways to do it.
Thank you.
Charlie?
Jason, my name's Charlie Bray, and Jason, I have a basic question for you. I guess I'm really concerned about, I think you just disclosed that each basin has basically been closed since the 60s, is that correct?
I'm sorry, Mr. Frey, your question kind of tailed off there at the end.
Have the basins been basically closed to no further allocations or new allocations within each basin? Is that correct?
So again, and please, I hope not to insult your intelligence, there's 256 basins statewide, and I would say that about half of those are designated, which when our office designates a basin, it's typically it's because they're reaching full apportionment. So not all the basins are fully appropriated.
Okay.
So half of them are probably designated, and I would say out of that maybe another half of those are fully appropriated. And we've issued orders, and many of those completely shut them down. But as I mentioned earlier, we haven't necessarily issued an order, but for all practical purposes, they're shut down because we're not issuing any new appropriations.
Well, I guess my concern is pretty much what Boyd brought up, is the surface water eventually becomes groundwater. It goes under the ground and recharges the underground aquifer, and then it's pumped out. I think if you're kind of look at it in generality, certain basins, we're using the majority of the water probably for agriculture, 40 or 50 years ago. And now there's a tremendous amount of new subdivisions going in, everywhere. It just keeps growing. 1 acre of agriculture ground consumes about 3 to 4 acre feet of water per year. 1 acre of subdivisions consumes almost the same amount. If you look at a lot of the records, they'll say each house will consume about 1 acre or over. Some of them are substantially over. But in generality, you can get 3 homes per acre in a subdivision. And so if you're to take a look at any place like Reno or Vegas, they never ever had, those areas or those basins never had as much farmland as there is right now, farmland and subdivisions in those basins. Are you following me?
I am.
So if you assume that I'm correct, or the homes, subdivisions use as much water as every acre of ground, every acre subdivision consumes the same amount of ground and water, or ground or surface water as a farm, why or where has all the water been going? How do you appropriate that water to all these subdivisions? Because there's never that many agriculture areas in Reno or Vegas or any place else.
Mr. Frady, let's first talk about Truckee Meadows. So much of that development has been based on the conversion of ag rights to municipal. Truckee Meadows Water Authority, Washoe County, the other suburbs, they have actually purchased ag rights from individual farms and transferred it to a municipal use. So that's what that growth has been based on. And as you know, down in Las Vegas, that surface water is the Colorado River, dating back from the 1929 compact, and Nevada got 300,000 acre feet. So that Vegas is a different animal in terms of their surface water. That was part of the compact. And again, as you I'm sure already know, they get the return flow credits. They're in a unique situation that every gallon of water they return to Lake Mead, they can get a gallon back out. So they're actually able to convert their 300,000 acre feet of Colorado River water into something like 480,000 acre feet, because they're returning 180,000 acre feet back to Lake Mead. So for those two areas you talked about, and again, Vegas is much different from Reno, Sparks area. Up here, it's been the conversion of ag water to municipal, and we've seen it elsewhere, and all across the West. That's a big topic. The farmlands are going away, and we're growing homes instead. And how do you strike that balance between growing our food for us versus the population growth and the fact that people want to live in the West?
Okay. If you're living in Fallon and have been a farmer for 5 generations and farming in Nevada, and this last year or this year, we only got 20% of our water. And you look around and you say, well, why aren't we getting as much water as we normally do? We look at other places and we see the growth upstream, and we realize that water is being apparently taken by upstream use, and we're left with no water, huge debts to try to pay off the bills and mortgages and everything that we have on the farms like in Fallon. And this is not only us, but it's also Lovelock and many other farming areas. But there is a real big problem, and I think the state engineers got to answer some questions, because where is the water going? We've never been this short ever in our history, and it seems like it's getting worse and worse every year. And why I honestly think it's because they're allowing so much development and so much more subdivisions upstream, which consumes as much water as the farm does, then it's a takings. And a lot of farmers' instances, that's what they're thinking. And I think it's a very serious problem.
Thank you, Mr. Frey, and I share some of your same thoughts, especially when you started off talking about surface water, groundwater connectivity, and being very candid here. I mean, again, you probably know what we're doing on the Humboldt. We're taking on a 4-year study to look at what that groundwater, surface water connectivity is, to decide whether or not groundwater pumpers are taking water from the Humboldt River, and if so, the senior decreed right holders need to be made whole through some augmentation plan. And again, being very honest, that has been a short, that has not been at least Nevada's strong suit when it comes to our water law. And it's been that way for a number of reasons. In the 50s and 60s.
The state engineer, a long time ago, we had what they called vested surface water rights. Those were there before even any of the irrigation districts came. And we had plenty of water, never a problem. And then as time progresses, we get into situations just like what Boyd has mentioned. The rivers are drying up. The rivers are drying up somewhere between Reno and Fallon, and between Elko and Lovelock. And it's got to be an over appropriation of water. That's the only.
We're in a drought. We're in a very bad drought. This year in the Sierras was the worst snowpack ever in the recorded history. So I agree with you on some of your issues in terms of either connectivity between surface water, groundwater, some basins that we've over appropriated. But right now we are in a tremendous drought.
Jason, real quick, I got somebody in the audience that's got a question. I just want to tail onto this with Charlie. And from my standpoint, even at the drought forum, I never made mention of over appropriation. And that's why I asked the question about where are we on the allocations of each basin?
Right.
It's good to hear that we're still using the old USGS.
Right.
But let me give you an example where I'm at, Charlie. 300 acre feet annually is the perennial yield in the Fernley groundwater basin. 300 acre feet. And the city right now is using almost 8,000 acre feet. Okay? Where did that water come from? It came from the Truckee Canal, and his predecessors issued those based on that, right?
Right.
My point is, we are in a drought. We need to cut this off and figure it out that with the lack of water in the mountains going through the rivers, the groundwater guys have to cut back too. And they're not. Some of them are boasting that they're going to get a full 4 cuttings this year. And and Jason and everybody, Alan and you guys, this isn't about the surface guys mad at the groundwater guys. It's about what's good for the water, our water system statewide for all of us. Because at the end of the day, if something bad happens, guess who's going to get blamed for it? Agriculture. Okay?
They already have.
They already have. So that's why I'm bringing this forward. We have a question from the audience, and we got to move to the horse thing. Go ahead.
For the record, Jason, this is Daryl Purcell from Lyon County, and I have a question, and it's kind of partly to inform the board, but after your curtailment down in Mason and Smith, my understanding last week is that we've only pumped to date 39,000 acre feet, which is way better than I think you guys expect. I think it's better than we expected. But to me, you guys just now this year came in and did something which to me is great, because in the past there's been abuses of the wells, and if it had been done 20 years ago, I really think you'd see a way different effect on our water basin than what we're seeing now, because we're in real bad drought. It's really severe. The only thing, and I don't know if I'd like you to respond to if you think that would actually, if you guys could have come in sooner and started working with us, I think it would have helped a lot. I don't know what you think, but I also would like to know, now I'm losing my mind, but if you had it over to do again, or to do it over again, instead of a curtailment, in my mind, if you'd have come to us in the valley and said, guys, we either have to do a curtailment or work with me, I think you would have got a lot further, because it's like, I hunt bears and lions, and you get a bear in a corner, what's it going to do? It's going to attack. So you put our back against the wall, we had to fight. I was not necessarily for the lawsuit, but I did support it because we kind of had to stand together as a community. So I just want to know what your thoughts are on those subjects.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Purcell, for the question. So let me update you. That 39,000 acre feet was as of August 1. Well, as of September 1, we've pumped 51,000 acre feet in Mason Valley, which is fantastic. Last year, we estimated about 134,000 to 140,000 acre feet pumped last year, and we're at 51,000 through the month of August. So again, as I mentioned out there last week, to all of the water users' credit in that basin, and the same holds true in Smith. Done just a fantastic job of getting the message and cutting back. So yeah, we're probably going to see 50% curtailment that we were looking for earlier in January. I appreciate what you said about backing a bear into a corner or up a tree, but we saw those water level declines last fall, and we felt like something had to happen immediately, and that was, we felt our job as a regulator to do just that, instead of saying, hey, you guys, can we get everyone together and get something put in place by this irrigation season to take 50,000 acre feet off. We just didn't think that was a realistic approach, so we took action, and we heard Judge Arbesteri. We heard his decision. That's why we've altered our vision forward for next year. Although if you were at our meetings last week, Mr. Purcell, you actually heard people say, hey, if we were willing to drop the lawsuit, would you be willing to go back to that kind of across-the-cut curtailment order? So I think people are starting to come around and seeing the value in the curtailment that we pursued earlier in the year. In terms of hindsight, of course, it's always 20/20, but I will tell you that the Walker system has worked well since the 40s up until 4 years ago. When you look at the hydrographs that we showed again at our workshop, you saw how we had big water years, and then we'd have just a few, and not major dry years. And then we'd have some big water years, and then a few dry years, and the system was able to recover. And then beginning in about 1985, we're seeing these water years not as big, not as frequent. You see the dry years more frequent and much drier. And I truly believe that over the last 30 years, you could call it climate change, whatever you want to call it, the system has just not been recharged like it did prior to that. And here we are in 2015, and that system is struggling. Seeing water level declines like we've never seen anywhere else in the state, pumping more groundwater basin out of Mason Valley than we can see anywhere else in the state, and something has to be done.
Okay, Jason, thank you. Before we go to the next one, just real quick, cancel that issue on those pivots over there in Golconda. Daryl reminded me that used to be farmed years ago.
Okay.
We have a couple of questions.
We have questions?
Sparks, if that's okay.
Sparks?
Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Who wants to go first? Okay, I got a quick question for you. Sorry for the new question. In California, in parts of the San Joaquin Valley, they're seeing 2 inches. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Sandy, oh, for the love of Pete. Sandy Raleigh with Beyond Pesticides, for the record. I have a question. So, in the state of Nevada...
Hang on. Number one, don't yell, please. We can hear you very good up here. Jim Barbie.
I think we're on topic number 10C, if I understand it, and you're still on board discussion, it's for possible action, and you haven't made a motion, you haven't got to public comment, so at this point, it'd be appropriate that you're just board members until...
Well, that's what I thought the comment in Sparks was, for board members.
Sandy, just wait.
I'm not a board member yet.
Just wait, Joe.
We are on 10C. Okay?
And we're on board discussion, and you guys have
Right.
the opportunity to take action, and then you can hold public comment.
Is there any discussion from the board members in Sparks? I thought that's what you guys were hollering about, so I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go ahead and open this up for the general public. Go ahead, if you have any comments on this item.
Okay, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
very well. You do not need to yell.
Okay, good. I'm Sandy Brawley with Beyond Pesticides. I have a question. So throughout the state of Nevada, do we have any corporations that are pumping water and selling them as bottled water like they are in California? Because in California, they're seeing 2 inches loss per month. Where the ground is dropping because of the water that's being pumped out of the San Joaquin Valley. So my question is, do we have corporations like Nestle in the state of Nevada doing the same thing that's affecting our farmers? And the access to the water that they have? Who would know that?
Jason,
Jason?
I'm not aware of any large corporations that have a bottling company for water. But that doesn't mean there's not some kind of a municipality serving someone that's doing that, and they're running some RO on it or something and selling it for bottled water. I am aware of some smaller bottled water companies in the past, but my best answer is I'm not aware of any large volume bottled water companies.
Is that something that you can look into? Because California is going to enact pumping regulations, but they're not going to be in effect until 2020. Is there something that we can get ahead of the curve for the state of Nevada? Is that something that you would be, who would I reach out to ask?
Jason.
You can reach out to me, but I want to be clear on your question. Are you saying that somehow commercial use of water for bottling water, where that water is going to be exported, in the case you described in California, is a non-preferred use, and therefore it's going to be prohibited?
Yes.
Yeah, we certainly don't have that.
It's unknown.
Like I said, I don't think it's a major issue, but I can look into that.
Oh, it's a major issue. If you're a farmer and you're having, anywho, so I'd love to chat with you. Thank you.
And I'll only say, as somebody in charge of a major water purveyor, the individual water purveyor has to make that decision. Do you want houses or do you want bottled soda? Because if you do it right, one has to give to the other. If you give all your water out to bottling plants, then you just shot your foot for houses. So that's exactly what Fernley had to do one day with Snapple. Make a decision. They took the houses. Okay, so everybody that wants to come down on how bad bottling is, there's a give and take, and that's how our system works, and that's one of the things I love about our water law. You know, and it's not all on Jason either. He's got hundreds of water purveyors out there that are in charge of their own destiny, and they have to make those decisions. Okay, so were there any questions in Sparks?
Yes.
For Jason?
Yes.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Hello, Jason. Dave Bear with Dedicated to You. We're planning to put a very large greenhouse operation in Nevada. Our water usage is pretty minimal because we have a closed loop system where we're going to be using approximately about 360 acre feet for the 60 acres of water per year. And so my question is this, I've come across this a lot in determining properties where we're going to put this greenhouse operation in as much as that, where the water rights that we're looking at, if we don't use the water rights, we've been told over and over again, whatever you plan to use or don't use, you have to use, otherwise you'll lose those water rights. And a lot of the advice I've been given from people who are in the know about water rights say, well, Dave, if you're going to put a greenhouse operation in and you're not going to use this much water, then you're going to be inclined to do something in order to show that you're using the water, which is tantamount to wasting it. In other words, I had one agent, a real estate agent, said, just turn on the spigot and just let it run and let it waste. I was kind of horrified by that. But by the same token, I want to ask this question. One of the things we're putting in this greenhouse operation is a caching system, which is going to be below ground to catch precipitation so we can pump the water from that cached water from precipitation back into the greenhouse. Where does that fit in water rights? And can you give me an explanation of how that fits in surface rights? And what do we need to know about caching water? Caching, collecting water.
And this water you'd be collected be from precip?
Yeah, precip, yes.
From rain and snow?
Yes.
Yeah, currently, as the law is written, if you follow to the letter of the law, that's an illegal use of the water. Because all beneficial use of water have to be appropriated through the state, through our agency. And the argument is that very precip that you're capturing goes to the recharge in the basin. And that's where this argument goes. You know, we talk about rain barrels. You've seen it in the newspapers. Can I have a 50-gallon water barrel? That's where this conversation starts. It's like you're in the middle of the desert. Yeah, capture it, even though the law doesn't allow for it. But quickly that discussion goes to, well, what if everybody starts to? What if all the big, super Walmarts and all these big structures in the city start capturing all that water? Is it going to actually impact the recharge and therefore conflict with existing rights? And so that's where you get to this, you can't do it. Now in Utah and other western states, the way they've dealt with it is they have an exemption where they've said, you know what, you can collect up to whatever, 1,500 gallons of rainwater a year, and you don't have to get a permit from the state engineer, but you do have to register your rain barrel. So I'm sorry my questions are so long-winded. There's just no easy answer to these water questions. Can you capture the water? If you ask me as a state regulator managing the water in the state, to the letter of the law, it is illegal.
Okay.
Jason, thank you. Dave, we're going to have to end it there. We went off topic on that item, so let's get back on. This item was for possible action. Jason, we're going to have to back up to your earlier point. What do you need from us at this point?
Well, I look
If
forward
nothing.
to your. I'm sorry.
Or maybe you don't need anything at this point.
I don't at this point. I really appreciated hearing from you from the ag sector in the drought forum. Look forward to hearing you again from the drought summit. I'm sure there's going to be some initiatives taken forward from the drought summit. As I had talked about in the drought forum, again, and you alluded to it, by far, ag use of water is the highest consumptive use of water in the state. And right or wrong, you should be taking a lot of credit when you save water, and unfortunately, you're probably going to take a lot of heat when you're not. So anything that you and your industry can help enlighten us about the water law, or how you can become more efficient in the use of your water, I mean, we're all ears. That's about the best I can offer you.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Well, we'll go ahead and we'll move back up to item number B. Again, this was for possible action. Doesn't mean we have to, but originally this item was placed here, I think, was to come to you, Dennis. All right. So, however, since then, and I'm not a legal guy, just to make things quick, Jim sent me a copy of our statute here, which is 564, and there's no, Dennis, I don't need you to tell me. It's very plain in there. Horses are livestock, as far as Flint goes, and in this department, okay? Where this is coming from is the issue of Jason in issuing water rights to the BLM, okay? So, again, Jason, why don't I'll let you cover it. I want you to make sure there's no rumors out there, but you explain your side of it, where this is coming from that you know, and where we might go with it.
Thanks, Chairman Six. So wildlife is defined in our statutes, wildlife purposes, as includes the watering of wildlife and the establishment and maintenance of wetlands, fisheries, and other wildlife habitats. We looked at NDOW's definition of wildlife, means any wild mammal, wild bird, fish, reptile, amphibian, etc. To cut to the chase, our office has issued, based on our definition, and we have looked at NDOW a little bit to confirm that we were doing the right thing. Our office has issued some permits for the watering of wild horses when they are in a herd management area. I testified several years ago. I think we'd issued somewhere around 28 to 33 permits for that, and one of them, I believe, was not in a herd management area. But that's our procedure. If someone applies for wildlife, for wild horses, it's in a herd management area, we have issued those permits to BLM and I think U.S. Forest Service. Never have I been blindsided more, I think, by an issue than I was in 2011 when this came to light. I again, not being a horseman or a cattleman, I was blindsided about the passion on the sides and how real these issues were. So in 2011, there was a bill, I think AB 329, that was introduced, and it just died, I believe. But it's been talked about a lot since 2011. This session, I made a comment in one of the committee meetings that I would really appreciate it if the legislature would put some sideboards on wildlife and wild horses to help direct our decisions when it comes to issuing or not issuing water rights. So I'm looking for guidance from the legislature on this issue.
Yes, Boyd.
Jason, this is Boyd Spratling again. In regards to wild horses, why wouldn't your department rely on the federal, very specific federal designation of wild horses? And they've been, through the federal legislation, been put into their own specific and special group. Why would you have to have state designation of those actual horses to administer any kind of water being designated for those purposes? It seems odd to me. I mean, it's my understanding that you're going on what state law tells your department to do, or your interpretation of it, whereas that federal law has put these horses into a very special category. Yeah, I'm really confused as to why you can't defer to that federal designation.
Again, I know, at least on my part, since 2009, it was ignorance of the issue. I mean, and I can't speak for previous state engineers, but no one had ever asked the question, hey, well, how come you're not paying attention to this federal definition? I honestly don't think that ever even came up as a topic or a reason to consider. Truly, I mean, again, it didn't seem like it came up until 2011.
And Boyd, I'll just add on to that. I think the other thing you can add to that is the beneficial use portion. We get into that too because you have to own cattle to prove beneficial use to get a stock water right. And
because it's without that using that federal designation, then you start, it puts you in a tough position to discuss whether or not they are wildlife, which would put them under the administrative, purview of the NDOW, which they don't have that. The federal government is not giving them any authority to administer horses, and are surely not livestock, which would put under or authority of this Department of Agriculture, or at least the brand department for sure.
Actually, by statute, they're specifically excluded.
That's my point. Why would,
because of federal,
for the purposes of water rights, why don't we defer? I mean, what would it take to defer to the federal definition of wild horse referral?
If you're asking me, it would take a statute change, and I don't know if you would have to have a statute change that points to that, or just make it clear in our statute, like AB 329 was written to just say that as used in this title, unless the context otherwise requires. Wildlife means any wild mammal, wild bird, fish, reptile, amphibian, mollusk, etc. However, this term does not include any wild horse or burro. I mean, so in AB 329 in 2011, they tried to be very clear that wild horses and burros were not wildlife. So it would require a statute change.
Well, I guess maybe my question is, it goes beyond that. What current statute are you referring to that puts them into a category other than with the federal designation?
Our water law, which is what guides our office. So it's our NRS 533
So
and 534.
it throws our state water law throws wild horses into wildlife.
Mammal.
Can you ask that again, please?
I say, so our current state water law designates horses, wild horses, as wildlife then?
Our current water law just says wildlife purposes, and our office has interpreted that as including wild horses.
So I guess my basic concern is why, if that is coming from an interpretation from your office, why would it require a statutory change for you to reinterpret what the law means?
Well, I guess it wouldn't have to, but we would need something compelling to tell us that that interpretation is wrong. And I guess I was going down what I consider to be a more surefire way is to get it clear in statute what it means. But you're right. I mean, if there was something that told us that that's not correct, then we'll listen to it now. Whether or not that comes from the AG's office, perhaps so.
Okay, thank you.
About referral to the federal law?
Well, this brings up an interesting point. And I don't want to throw this on Jason because he just opened the door. To you, Dennis. To me, for there to be a conflict in the law, there has to be, somebody's got to go after a decision that Jason's office has made and challenge that decision. And I'm just wondering, what can the Department of Ag do to do just what Jason says he needs to do? What do you think, Dennis?
You know, I'm Dennis Belcourt, Deputy Attorney General for the record. Certainly one possibility would be to request an Attorney General's opinion, and it wouldn't probably be me because I'm not the water guy to interpret the language. But I haven't even looked at their chapter from that perspective. There could be, you know, I don't know that they have authority to do regulations to interpret their statute. So I couldn't say that might be an option. But there may not be a regulation authority. So, but anyway, that would be one option for the Board of Ag or the Department of Ag to request as an Attorney General's opinion from our office, and you would do that by letter directed to. I can give the name to Jim, the person, to Judy Chandler.
So the Board of Ag could request an AG's letter, CC through you, but to the specific.
It could be either the board or the director, I believe, because it's either the chair of the board or the director of the department. But
the director would be looking for that direction from the board.
Well, and I mean, we've had a lot of discussion about this item leading up to this, gang. And, you know, I don't want to go out in front and do something that needs to be done by some other agency or the private sector. But what Jason's told us we know the track record at the legislature. I mean, you would think this would be a no-brainer, right? Why would even the wild horse advocates, okay? So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I hear somebody in Carson asking for either a change in the legislature or a definition. Let's ask for it. I mean,
hasn't that been the problem all along, is that there is no one firm definition for the wild horse?
under his statutes.
And it's completely excluded in other statutes.
Well, and that was the big question, Dennis, is that's why I brought up our statute earlier. We're clear, the Department of Ag, what a horse is.
Well, and what a federal horse is, per statutes under 569.008.
Yeah.
Dennis Belcourt again. The NRS is filled with provisions that have one meaning, a word has one meaning in one chapter and has a different meaning in the other. And ideally, you have definitions for both that are clear enough for why they apply to this chapter and not the other. But it would be the word as used in the water chapter that would, you wouldn't necessarily turn to a definition, and you could possibly turn to a definition in the ag chapter and say, well, this illustrates the meaning, at least in the ag context, and that might be helpful in an AGO. It wouldn't necessarily be determinative. But that would be something whoever writes the Attorney General's opinion would look at. Look at the various definitions out there and see which one, as part of the exercise, which one rationally connects to the water chapter and makes sense in terms of understanding where wild horses come in under the water chapter.
Okay, based on that, gang, wouldn't the most appropriate way to do it with our agencies? This is an issue with Jason. Jason, how about if we send you a letter asking you to get an interpretation before the Department of Ag asks one for your statutes?
So you're going to request from our agency our interpretation of that NRS 533 law?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
What would happen? I mean, are you already saying there's an interpretation, Jason, or do we need one from the AG?
Yeah, there's nothing. Again, I apologize for my long-winded answers because, again, it just there's all these nuances. At one time, a former Deputy Attorney General wrote an opinion, but I'm not sure that it's an accepted AG opinion. And Dennis, you can correct me on this very issue. In fact, the very first time I heard about it, I heard it from Ramona, not from our AG. And I didn't even know that it was being done. And if memory serves me, it wasn't real clear what the interpretation was. So if you were to request our interpretation, we would probably respond. Our agency would respond, not our Attorney General. And then, are you saying you would take that and then maybe request an AG opinion from your AG based on what we responded to you?
Go ahead. Try to answer that.
This is Boyd Spratling again. I think it could be easily said that these two different departments, in state government, have a somewhat conflicting definition of where the horses fall, and as to their designation, I think it's probably totally appropriate to ask for an AG's opinion to try and resolve and bring those two definitions into a little more proper alignment.
Tim?
Does NDOW want the horses? The way I understand, NDOW's not wanting horses anyways. I mean, so...
Well, no, by federal title, the horses are under BLM's control by federal definition. Fish and Wildlife, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is on the record referring to them as feral horses or feral livestock per many public meetings and the state Fish and Wildlife Service director in the state of Nevada. So, and Jason, not to backtrack, but I'm picking all this up and looking at it. So you're referencing that in your NRS 533.023 wildlife purposes is the definition that your DAG then referenced NDOW's on what is wildlife, right? So they were referencing what is defined as wildlife by NDOW, whereas they didn't address or associate any of the definitions of livestock or any of the definitions of wild horses that is actually listed in the department or the agriculture statutes. So basically, we have two different areas and no clear reference in your statutes to where, and so your DAG basically looked at that and said, well, all wildlife are defined as all mammals by the wildlife statutes, therefore they're inclusive. But that was not an official AG.
That's my recollection, Jim.
Okay.
Hey, Tim.
But I guess I don't understand then, because it's not NDOW that's asking for the permit for the water.
No, it's BLM.
And, okay, but BLM, if we're going under that it's NDOW's horses, or NDOW's doing the wildlife thing, wouldn't they have to ask for the water? Wouldn't they have to ask for the water permit if it was for deer, or elk, or anything else? I mean, BLM can't go in and ask for a water permit for deer, can they, or don't? Wouldn't it have to be NDOW that did that? They asked for a water permit? I mean,
Jason?
well,
Chairman?
Yes, does NDOW ask for water rights for watering wildlife?
For wildlife, but not wild horses.
Okay.
But not. So how does BLM?
where does BLM?
Well, and I guess that's the next question, Jason. I alluded to it earlier. How does BLM get a water right, or do they get one nowadays? I'll ask that. Based that they can't prove beneficial use, they're not the owners.
Well, they are the managers of it in herd management areas, and that's the link.
Gotcha.
That's the link.
Okay.
Is that they manage them in those herd management areas, which, you know, parallel to, you know, cattlemen running cattle.
Okay, so back to the original question, Jason. Are you in dire need of an interpretation from the AG to help you better manage Nevada water law on this item, or do we need to ask for that separately?
And again, our office is perfectly fine with continuing to issue wildlife permits the way we have been, and that includes issuing them to wild horses in herd management areas. Again, 2011, go back in time, never knew that was such an issue and opposing sides that were so passionate about it. So our office was okay issuing them in these herd management areas, and then 2011 hit and we heard, oh, this is a problem because of the manner in which, you know, it affects grazing, etc. So if people want to continue to put our office in the middle of this fight, I need better direction on whether or not wild horses are wildlife or not.
So an interpretation would be of benefit to all interests here, it appears, I would say.
No, I agree. Like I said, I'd like to have a clear definition of whether or not wild horses are wildlife or not for the purposes of issuing permits.
Yes, and I hear the answer has been answered, that we need to ask for it. Or somebody has to. Jason's office is happy with the interpretation they have.
Well, I shouldn't say I'm happy with it because I didn't really know it was
Mr. Chairman. I didn't say that sarcastically, Jason.
Okay.
I was quoting you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Happy, I believe.
See if I can get it.
Yes.
This is Lynn Hetrick in Sparks. I think that if you want to ask that question, I think it makes some sense, but I would caution to be very careful if you open Pandora's box, because you may not get the answer you want. And so you really need to consider that first. And then second, the asking a question of the Attorney General for a formal opinion, the key is the way you ask the question. You've got to absolutely phrase the question to only create the answer you want, or get a no or a no opinion or something. Because if you're not very, very careful, you really do open Pandora's box. So I would just caution that this needs to be thought through very carefully, and not just write a random letter and send it off saying, we want to know whether or not these are wild horses.
Actually, what you want to do is write the request and give them the language that ultimately gets turned around and becomes yours.
Yes.
Yeah. Boyd, is this a big issue with us? I mean,
I actually think it is.
okay.
You know, we're in a situation that's not desirable as far as I'm concerned. You know, where we have a federal designation and definition, and it conflicts with certain parts of state law. And I don't see it. I mean, Lynn is right. We can go to a worse place, but we're not in a very good place now. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
We're trying to prove that somehow through certain language.
Okay, if this board votes to get an Attorney General's opinion, Dennis, did you hear what I said earlier? And I'm not belittling you, but it is very important that we write this in a way that the language could be the language.
Couldn't the board make a recommendation to have a board member, a couple of board members, whatever, assist the director in writing a request for an opinion on this issue from that standpoint? Or
Dennis Bogler for the record. You could do that. I'd recommend just having one board member, because if you have two board members, you have a committee and a subcommittee where you have to do the open meeting law business. So
you could recommend.
Well, wait a minute. We could give the authority to all of this to Jim, and Jim could pick who he wants.
Yeah.
The board just shouldn't designate two.
That's right.
Right.
Jim could pick two or three.
Yeah, I think it should be just one person. You're absolutely right. Just pick one person that could be the director to work with me or work on an opinion request. And yeah, don't pick two.
Okay. Anybody want to make a stab at the motion so we can move on?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Spratling.
I would move that under, let's see. Under B.
Yes.
That we direct the director to obtain a legal opinion or take steps toward forming a question to the Attorney General's office to get a legal opinion on the water designation of federal wild horses and burros in the state of Nevada.
Motion is made and seconded. Mr. Spratling, the motion, seconded by Mr. Frey. Does that sound good, Jim? Dennis?
It does. Does that motion though include a specific designation for the wild horse? We want to clarify that within this. Is it just the water issue? Is it just the water issue that we want that, or is it the definition of the wild horse?
The wild horse have been designated by the federal government. What we're doing is what is going to be the designation under state water law?
Under water law.
Okay.
For them to issue permits or rights or whatever.
Right.
Irregardless of the exact language, the intent of the conversation.
Yes. And just like the request for the legislature to address, it will be specific to the horses.
And this is an official Attorney General's opinion, correct?
Yeah. Okay. Any more discussion? Jason, do you have anything more to add?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Sparks, are you okay with this?
Yes.
Okay, any public comment? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you,
Thank
Jason.
you very much. Appreciate it. Anytime. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, very.
Thank you.
Okay, item 8, food nutrition. We're going to 8A, request permission to go to workshop and hearing for Chapter 583 to promulgate the regulations necessary to license craft food operations. SB 441. Lynn Hetrick, you're the man.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The request is just what you see. The craft food operations is pickling. This is being done in support of our local farmers and those folks who grow vegetables to and maybe not able to sell all of their crop at harvest time, or maybe actually prefer to have the income or the opportunity to spread the income from pickling various vegetables and the like over the season. This gives them the opportunity to do that. We just need to go to workshop and hearing and get the regulations written. The request is to approve permission to go to workshop and hearing.
Very good. Do I have a motion? Mr. Anderson.
I motion that we allow going to workshop and hearing on Chapter 583 for the craft food operations under SB 441.
Nice. Motion's been made and seconded. It was made by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Frey. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Or, I'm sorry. You're supposed to say nay if you're opposed. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimous. Donnell, do we have a board update?
We do. So this is Donnell Barton, the Food and Nutrition Division Administrator, and I'll make it as brief as possible. SB 503 passed, which gave us breakfast after the bell. We have 114 schools that are 70% or greater free and reduced. So they're applying for $1 million in grants. We have an online grant system. We have 10 schools who have put their grants in and we're in the process of being approved. So that's moving along very well. We've done trainings with district food staff and with principals on the new breakfast after the bell bill, and things seem to be going well. We are bringing on 2 new charter schools for the National School Lunch Program, but we're losing Eureka County School District for the National School Lunch Program. They felt like they could do it without our regulations and still feed all the kids in that district. They have about a 30% free and reduced there. Then for the meat, fish, and produce and egg files, those statutes were given over to us to do the inspections. So we're working on getting those inspections done and hope to have those done by the end of the calendar year. We've done all of our administrative reviews with the National School Lunch Program, and things are going along well with that. We've given out $225,000 for the National School Lunch Equipment Grant. We've given out a little bit over $2 million for the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. We've closed out our grant for the school breakfast expansion. Our summer food service program for this summer, we had an 8.5% increase in sites, so we fed at 268 sites across the state, and we added some rural sites in Elko, Ely, Laughlin, and Nye counties. I don't have a final count of the meals that were served. I'll probably have that for you for the next board meeting. They have 60 days to turn in those claims, so August was the last month, and so we're waiting to get that. But our June counts looked up, which was a good thing. Director Barbie has already talked about the request for information for the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and we should be sending out a letter soon on our conclusions with that meeting. We had 2 dairy farms and 3 single-service manufacturers that were inspected and approved for continued inclusion in the interstate milk shippers list. We had our Nevada School Nutrition Association meeting in June, and so we did a pre-conference and 4 breakout sessions at that conference. And then Anna Vickery attended the National Association of the Dairy Regulatory Officials, and they had an FDA update on the new FSMA regulations. So that's what we've been up to since the last board meeting.
Thank you. Donnell, this is Paul Anderson. Just had a question on the Emergency Food Assistance Program. What is that?
It is a program that provides food packages to folks that are meet poverty income requirements. The amount of food that you get in a food package is not going to cover you for a month. It'd probably cover you for a week. As an example, it depends on the family size. So for a family of 1, you're going to get a protein. You'll get 3 cans of vegetables or fruit. Usually there's a package of lentils or some sort of legume, and then we've had an opportunity to have frozen or dried fruit.
So it probably, for a person of one, it probably cover you for about a week and a half, but it's only meant to provide additional food for someone. We'll not feed them for the whole month. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions for Donnell? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're pretty close to finishing up. Would everybody entertain like a real quick bathroom? We'll come back and finish up. Is that all right?
Sure.
About 5 minutes, please.
David's phone situation.
Oh, that's a good. Kind of implies world. Yeah, that seems like that program seems like a lot of redundancy.
Take you home, right? You guys set you up. Honest, the greatest thing is amazing.
Just don't tip it publicly.
No, I'm not gonna say.
Hey, Boyd.
Yes. Physically and mentally, I feel
Yes, sir.
Jim should we defer my meeting mod to another meeting?
Oh, really? We'll go with 5. I mean, we should have enough time.
But there
We're
are
almost
chairs
down
sitting
to
right next to it. People want to
on
watch it.
Nubbins, and we got 3 hours unless you guys are wanting to get on the road.
No, I just, they want me to turn in my low motor vehicle by 7 today.
And we can defer it.
I mean, it's,
No, because you need to get on the road, yeah.
well, in the vehicle I drove to knows the rules, and there's.
It's on the inside fence on that.
It's the old secret of motor pool, man. You can always park across the street.
Yeah.
And then you can dump it across the street too.
Oh, I'm just laughing. I should have thought of that.
You're an old state hand.
I don't
My
use motor
education.
pool at all.
Well, you're
We used to motor pool, but I don't ever dealt with motor pool, thank God. So I don't know.
Hey, Jerry. That's what we were talking about.
Bart and Bill are still in town. I think they drove together. One of them could take his car back, and then he could ride with Dale or somebody else.
533. This is what he's saying.
Yeah.
Wildlife poops.
Well, we're saying that maybe
533.
somebody from ag could drive your motor pool car back.
They basically went to
ride
wildlife
back.
to invest.
Yeah.
They chose.
They can get my car out.
They
Sure. I can park my car.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Otherwise. So, you're in. Oh, your personal vehicle.
Yes.
Oh, they can do that.
I know.
Well, I have my.
I'm sure not.
And Nevada State, and Nevada State law specifically excludes.
That's a lot to add. I don't have.
Motor pool's not answering.
That's where they.
I don't have
No,
Bart.
they can't.
Because what they're saying.
They went to lunch, so they still make me. I just don't know.
Wildlife defined means any wild.
That doesn't just take my organic. Right. I could.
Wild bird.
Yeah.
They don't address.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a lot. We were talking organic.
And they don't address water.
Well, GMOs say. Well, GMOs. Yeah, but they still, they don't understand.
And so.
They don't understand that. What it is, what it means, what, but somebody said it's bad.
You know, and then the thing is,
It's a bad word. I wish it wasn't called genetically modified crops.
Should have three-letter bad word.
That's right, yeah. It could have been, you could title it something, you know, the different crop or something, you know. Something other than genetically modified has a bad connotation.
Yet they're issuing the permit to federal agency.
Oh my God, it's terrible.
And although they're using this, state statute from the State Department, that department.
Yes, I know. What's up, you? Look over those. But those.
I mean, I know they're gonna.
I knew that.
It's surprising too that they're really
less field. Well, we have policy on. There was a lot of stuff at the legislature. Carry weapons. We had her bill on the campus carry bill. Yeah. That was a big deal. So we have amendment right that we believe in, right to possess a firearm.
I can do a lot of closer.
Oh, good.
I think concealed carry is a good
West is so specific.
You can take that.
That was gonna be easier to talk about than marijuana.
Whereas they're.
No, I don't think it's crazy. That's the thing is, I don't.
Marijuana? I don't have I tell you what, John, I was in Denver.
I have my car plugged in. That won't help me in here, will it?
Does it have a USB?
No, it's just a straight car.
Dave always likes being different.
It's a mini USB.
Your mind thinks, oh hell, it's
Oh, you got the big one.
Yeah, but I can use either.
Oh, yeah.
I got a USB.
But it's 12 volts.
Windows USB. Yeah, the USB. So all we need is that plug-in.
So then you can use your.
Yeah, you can go get it.
Yeah, please. I mean, once I get in the car, I'm okay, but at the same time.
Is it like officially dead right now?
I'm in the red. It's in battery save mode. I ought to just turn it off. Wait till the end of the meeting.
Yeah, see, the problem is he's over here.
I've been in the red most of my life.
So that's.
But it is the same,
My daughter and I are having a religious discussion. She started yesterday on the way up here. Really? Yeah. She wants to know how come the Pope gave the okay for priests to absolve people that do abortions. Yeah, remember I told you? Well, and then Audrey Spratling says they already can. Reconciliation.
Yeah.
Any sin.
Go to confession. Confess.
So I told her that. She's like, yeah, but how come was abortion? No, and I said, honey, it's, so we're having these little discussions. I said, she's warm, and I had to slam her by saying, oh, hey, we came from the Boy Scout thing.
I almost lied to you.
Thank you.
I went to grab the cord and it's the big one. And I had to dig in the truck.
Thanks, Daryl.
It's just got a little farmer do it now.
So we need
That
this
makes it
one.
work better.
Yep. Usually not. My experience is no. It doesn't.
Oh, I don't have a.
Does it fit in there?
Yeah,
Should. There you go.
there it is. Yahtzee.
So Dave, you think you have problems? I've got a son who married a Mormon family.
Yeah.
And a daughter who's a Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, wow, Paul. That's a tough one.
Yeah, needless to say, we do not discuss religion in any family get-togethers.
Why is that?
Have a son who's Mormon and a daughter who's Jehovah's Witness.
No. That's why
I thought,
You know,
I thought
we
it was
try to
okay.
avoid.
My family's Protestant, and my
The screen
in-laws
should
are
have popped on.
Actually, did kind of start.
That can
okay.
get interesting as it
Just kind of stay away from those discussions at Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Okay, let's go back on the record. Sparks, are you ready?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, we're ready.
Okay, good.
We've actually been on the record.
We're back on the record, and we are at animal industry, right? Request permission, it's 9A, to go to workshop and hearing to adopt the Association of American Feed Control Officials model bill for the implementation of Food Security Modernization Act as required by SB 488 as amendments to NAC Chapter 587. Mr. Flint Wright, the administrator, is presenting.
Okay. Flint Wright for the record. Many of you, we've discussed this particular change at previous board meetings, and I know Boyd is well versed in the changes that have went into it. This is part of SB 488. Essentially is NRS now, and it establishes that we're going to change the rules according to American Association of Food Control Officials. We adopted that language during the legislative session, and this is essentially the NAC change, making a regulatory change. We are simply looking forward to going to workshop and hearing. From there, of course, we'll bring it back to you as Jim described it in process. That's pretty much it, unless you guys have questions on it.
Any questions for Mr. Wright? Mr. Spratling?
No questions.
Really?
Not on this one.
Oh.
That comes later.
No, I mean, okay, I will say something.
No, too late.
No, no, it's not. No, in general, I'm not big on adopting just carte blanche some other association or agency or some level of government's long files, pages of regulation.
Yeah.
But I think this is one that fit pretty well into what our purposes are here. For food safety.
Yeah, and just so many of you may have got some calls from a Fallon resident that all of this is bad and it's more, you got to be prepared to defend this stuff, guys, when we vote on this, because there's a lot of misinterpretation going on out there, Charlie, that, it's just more rules and a way to get more money, and you got to figure out the play here that's the big question. Do we want to do this, or do we want the feds coming in and doing it, I guess?
And add a fed rate versus a state rate, and add a state relationship versus a fed relationship in the void, and I think that's what we tried to carry forward during the session in terms of getting the lawmakers to position the state in this manner. It's the example of, do you want the EPA directly regulating Nevada, or do you want the Nevada Department of EPA and DCNR regulating EPA laws in Nevada? The same is true for this reference, and that's as simple as the choice is, because the laws that allow these things to happen and to move forward, they're on the books since 2012. That train.
So we basically don't have a choice.
No, this is FDA. Well, this is U.S. federal law. Yeah. And it's a matter of whether the state administers the program or the feds administer the program.
If you're comfortable with it.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Boyd.
Flint,
you're good.
And just as a means of giving a little background to the rest of the board members, that at the legislature, we were going to put into statute and codify a lot of very specific rules relating to the Federal Food Modernization Act. And my feeling was, and it became, I think we succeeded in this, is that to back up and say, we can implement incrementally the things that we have to along the way, as opposed to having in state statute where it would have to go back to the legislature to change. And if we're doing some of that, or a majority of that, at this level, and the assurance was to the legislature that we would adopt some of these types of things. But it still puts a lot of the onus back on the Board of Agriculture, as opposed going and trying to change things that are in statute at the legislature. So that's the reasoning why, and that's probably the argument to the people who are concerned about, it's more rules, and it doesn't make me any happier than anybody else. But the thing is, these are our choices that we had in that situation, so. We pulled it out of the legislature and brought it basically back to this board.
And why you would see a fee associated with this is the feds have been pretty clear that it's going to be fee-based and that there will be no federal monies to support this. So in other words, if you would fall under this feed requirement inspection, your fee, and it was not a state-administered program, then you would pay whatever the fee is that the FDA, or you couldn't get the certification and you couldn't do the business, similar to other FDA programs. So this just gives basically Nevada the capacity to administer it.
You know, we backed it up from being administered federally. We even take a step further back away from the state legislature back to this board to have the regulatory ability or the
where possible,
yeah,
where there's choice.
So, and the thing is, we can still implement a lot of things incrementally as opposed to going to the whole Mary Ann.
And we have to, because I mean, they haven't been, I think the rules on this, the final rules are coming out in another couple of months, or just came out.
They were just released yesterday.
There you go.
Oh, so they got it done on September 1st, huh?
They were released yesterday, but they won't be in the Federal Register till September, end of September, because of the late.
Jim, you're comfortable with it, right?
Well, I mean, I'm as comfortable as I am serving on the State Environmental Commission and implementing federal EPA rules. I mean, I would, my personal preference would be, if that's what you're asking, would be that we didn't have the Food Safety Modernization Act, or that we had something that was much less regulatory authority in 2012. And that's what's been so painful, all the way from this to the produce certification to the traceability. I mean, many of these things that we've been talking about today are a direct result of that law, and then the associated rules that are coming down with it.
You know, I just got to bring something up. In our business, we have to submit samples of everything that we do. Now, let me back up a little bit. You know, we have a big still. There's like 5,000 gallons of mash cooking, and then it gets fermented, and then it goes into what they call a beer tank or beer well, and then it goes through the still. But before we even get there, we have a little tiny still in the back, and we will blend certain types of products together to determine if this is going to be a good gin, and we might do 100 of them, different types. So we'll put different types of berries and different types of sweeteners or like orange peel, or just, there's tons of things you can do. But once you get a recipe down and that little tiny batch is pretty good, and then you maybe take 10 of your best ones and put them out on the table and have your customers come try them, you know, say which one do you like. And anyway, that's kind of how we do it. But before we even order the bottles, we have to ship that off to TTB. Now, are we going to have to do that to the state too, or will, I mean,
in some cases, and it depends on the rules that came out yesterday that we've got to spend some time going through, and in what areas, you know, I mean, it's not just this broad blanket they define in the rules and the regs, but that's where we've taken, because this is very similar to the dairy industry and the requirements in the dairy industry in terms of testing, so on and so forth. We have the dairy lab that we've developed over the last year, created a savings in the Dairy Commission to be able to have our own lab and do our own testing, have our own microbiologists working in there. Part of that is positioning us to be able to do as affordably some of those tests as we can in the state, versus you having to go send them out as a producer to a federal testing lab or to...
Well, we have to, because of TTB laws, Tax and Trade Bureau laws,
right,
and we have to do that before we can get their label. We have to have our label approved. We can't even go out and buy the bottles because our bottles are etched. So we have to send the bottles out to get. I mean, this is a long, drawn-out process. So, like, and I'm sorry, I'm only talking in my case, but this is about all I know. But once we get that approval back, and the wording has to be just exact, they call them botanicals, you know, they're like essences, and they make the flavor. Anyway, that all has to be approved. We even put Nevada sagebrush in our gin. I don't know if you know that, but I shouldn't say for a recipe out, but that's a really good ingredient.
Obviously, liquor isn't a part of this, and food isn't a part of that. We haven't got the authority on food. What we're talking about is feed.
About what?
Feed. That's what this
Well,
one is
isn't that, I mean, every product's grown becomes
They're all legislated and regulated separately and differently, down to produce versus feed manufacturing.
I guess I
don't make the rules.
No, I'm not. I guess when I'm asking you, in our case, would we have to submit them both to the Department of Agriculture and the...
You're not affected by this regulatory, if you're talking the booze side, that isn't part of this.
But what about the,
Are you manufacturing?
like juniper berries? We have a lot of juniper berries we put in. No?
No.
Well, you're not feeding it to animals.
This is a manufacturing.
This is only feed for animals, not feed to eat?
No, that's food. When in humans, we call it food.
Well,
In
what
your
does this
case,
thing say?
We call
Am
it
I
liquor.
misreading it?
In your case, we call it liquor, which is separate.
How do you get on the mailing list to be a volunteer to taste?
It says...
That's what we really all want to know.
It says plant food control officials. Now, am I not...
That's
is
a
that
broad
food for
determination.
just animal?
Charlie.
FSMA, which is driven by the Food and Drug Administration, is broken into several different categories. Produce is its own category. Food manufacturing is its own category. Feed manufacturing for animals, for pets, is its own separate category, so on and so forth. And I think, and I may be wrong, I think liquor is separate from all that and under its own regs, which is what you're talking about, which is the acronym that you use. The
Botanicals?
No, the
TTB is tax, that used to be ATF,
Yeah,
and now they're all about
authority
taxing.
reporting on booze. That's where you go to.
Yeah, but, and
That's
that,
not part of this.
that's really controlled in our industry.
Charlie,
I mean,
that's what they're trying to do on food in general.
Elliot Ness.
If this says Association of Plant Food.
That corrects. So
Not-
that is a professional organization of food regulators that, because all of this goes to FDA, right?
Right.
So they have I'm trying to think of an example of where you have like we're the Board of Agriculture that regulates agriculture.
Uh-huh.
You have a private association like the Farm Bureau Association who sets their policies and what initiatives that they're trying to do. That group is a association of those food lobbyists, food da-da-da-da. So all of this feed controls, which is new, now falls under that FDA ruling. For example, fresh produce was not administered by FDA until FSMA was passed in 2012. When they passed this federal law in 2012, right, it's on the books, it's a done deal, signed, inked, all that kind of good stuff. That has resulted in the food, which is the Food Safety Modernization Act, that has resulted in all these regs that have now come throughout the states, and it's in different categories. This specific category is for feed manufacturing for animals, livestock. It's its own little entity, hub of regulation. Separate even than for produce, which we talked about earlier in the meeting, which has to do with the producer and vendor's certificate, which is why we're doing that, so that we have traceability.
Charlie, let me give you an example. Okay, the only way this would actually affect you is if you were like Steve Safford last night. Okay?
If what?
If you were like Steve Safford and you were brewing beer, okay,
Yeah.
and then you were taking those excess, and it's called distiller's grains. okay? And then you wanted to commercially sell that to a feedlot to fatten a
We
calf.
do.
To Dave Sticks Cattle Company, do you commercially sell it?
We give it,
I thought you made it all out of grapes, or juniper berries.
no, well, on the grain side of things,
Okay,
the grain is grown and harvested on the ranch, and we put it in silos, and it gets ground up really fine. And then it goes through the distillation process and comes out as a byproduct, and it's wet.
right.
But it's grain. And the big dairies, almost everyone in the state of Nevada, the big ones, buy DDG, which is dried distilled grain coming from the Midwest, and they buy it in car lots, and it's yellow. It's like all corn, I think, from the big distilleries in the Midwest. Now we take our little, and we're tiny, but we take a little bit over there. They mix it in the feed wagon, but it has 4 different types of grain in it usually, depend on what we're making. But there's 4 different types of grain. It's already been run through the distillery, and we make happy cows.
You'll be you'll be regulated, Charlie.
Do you sell
I
it?
know.
Do you
You'll be
sell it?
regulated.
First of all,
But not for the liquor side, for
Right.
the
Yeah.
byproduct.
For the
side.
feed.
do you sell over a ton of it?
Pardon me?
Do you sell over a ton of it?
We don't sell any of it right now.
They give it away.
Then you're not
We
gonna
do give
by the
it. Now, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Is we go over, all goes to Jason Storm, which is our neighbor.
Yeah.
He's a half mile away.
Then
He
you're not
puts
gonna-
it through his cow. We go up and we physically clean his corrals and pick up all the manure, put it back on the field, grow another crop of grain. It's a complete circle.
Sure.
And that's what makes the happy cows in Nevada. But the dried distilled grain is a really heavily used product in the dairy industry. And I could show you big, huge truckloads coming in,
And,
one or two
they're
times
all
a
being
week.
regulated in their home states that they're coming from.
I'm sorry?
And they're all being regulated from their home states that they're coming from.
Okay.
As a feed product.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So
All right.
here we are, gang, and we'll all be out of jobs if the feds decide to enforce this as well. And we got 2 people. You guys all realize that. We haven't said that
I know.
at all in this
No.
whole ordeal.
That's-
We're assuming the feds won't come in because we're doing it, right?
I'm assuming that.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like the environmental commission. If you don't adhere to the federal laws, the EPA, if the EPA looks at the environmental commission and says, yeah, we've let you administer it, but you're not administering it in a way that
We like.
we like, then they revoke that cooperative, and they come in and administer the EPA laws within the state. So, I mean, it's the exact same thing.
So as long as
I don't like it either, but I'm not gonna tell you a fairy tale,
As long as we don't ruffle any feathers, then we'll be okay.
as long as we follow the law in our implementation.
Mr. Spratling.
You waiting for a motion?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the department go to workshop and planning to adopt an Association of American Feed Control Officials model bill for the implementation of Food Security Modernization Act, FSMA, as required by SB 488, as amendments to NAC Chapter 587.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. It was made by Mr. Spratling, seconded by Mr. No. All of those in favor of the motion? Any questions? All of those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
I would like to abstain.
Okay, Mr. Frey abstains. Motion passes.
Okay, Flint Wright for the record, this is simply a board update. Of course, we typed this out. I'm not going to go into every single one. I would like to point out some things that have changed from my written update. We wrote this last week, and as we all know, things change. Number 1 would be under the 3rd bullet point for animal disease. West Nile testing has been extremely heavy this year. Our staff there at the disease lab have been absolutely swamped. It says there that we have no known equine or human cases thus far, and of course the news made me a liar. As of Monday, we have 1 equine case and we have 1 human case. Jim described some of that in his update, that they're not exhibiting any symptoms as of yet, but they have, yes, Jim?
It just broke that we have a second case,
Oh,
and
we have
they
a second.
are administering symptoms, and they're in the hospital.
Yeah.
I'm a liar again. So there are now be 2
There's
cases.
no way you're gonna know, you just saw it on the.
Okay, so we now have 2 human cases. The equine case was on a 13-year-old horse that was taken to UC Davis and is in intensive care there. Really not much more to explain other than that. So that's where we're at with West Nile currently. We've never seen the level of test samples come into the lab that we've seen this year. That doesn't mean that there's a greater risk out there. That just means the agencies that we cooperate with bringing those samples into us have been working extra hard this year, particularly. So most of those are Clark County, Washoe County, places like that, and they send it to us for testing. We continue to equip and train brand inspectors on iPads. We currently have 38 trained out there in the field. That puts us a little over 60%. We have approximately 3 to 4 more to do between now and this fall. Also in January, we'll start a whole new funding cycle for that. Our grant will kick back in as soon as Dale does a work program and gets that done for us. Anyway, and then we'll start with essentially 25 more again next spring. Those are kind of the big things we've been working on there. As far as on wildlife services, I wish Mark would have stuck around a little bit, but I guess he had to leave. We did request a letter of support. This will be for Robert Little to gain access to zinc phosphate concentrate, so ranchers can have that one more option for using that against ground squirrels in their hay ground or other right-of-way applications. We will be approaching Nevada Cattlemen's, Nevada Farm Bureau, and those agencies to provide a letter of industry support that will go with the application process through Mark Hansen. That being said, we also had a request from Dr. Boyd Spradling that we explain our current process for registering antibiotics and vaccines throughout the state. And to address that, we actually have Dr. Michael Greenlee in Sparks. He could be with us here today, so he will be explaining that process. And Mike, can you hear me?
Say again.
Yeah, Mike, are you there?
Yes.
Actually, I think we've had best luck if somebody goes to the podium. Doesn't everybody else feel the same way?
It'll work.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
This will be pretty brief. Currently, we're not licensing any antibiotics for use in the state, but we are some vaccines, and it's kind of been really, well, I want to say a voluntary program, but most of the vaccines that are used in this state for animals that are approved and licensed, we don't get a request to approve those for use. Most of what we're doing are vaccines that Veterinary Services, Vet Biologics has given a conditional license of a year, and it's usually because they're gathering more information. And so they allow it to be used and sold, and we get requests to approve that for use in Nevada. And that way we know about it, and also if there are any adverse issues or maybe lack of efficacy, hopefully we'll hear about it and we can pass that on. So those we license for use, basically sale to a veterinarian for use in livestock or small animals. We also have a few that are for pre-license testing. They haven't even been licensed by Veterinary Biologics, but they've been given a go-ahead to do a trial. And a popular example of that would be the Foothill abortion vaccine that is being used on a limited basis in the state. Also, we get a few requests for autogenous vaccines to be approved, and Vet Biologics doesn't regulate those. They allow it, but we get requests to approve the use. And what that is, basically would be for a producer that has a particular problem that nothing else is responding to. They will actually take samples from their affected animals and then create a vaccine that's specifically tailored to the problem they're having. We don't do a lot of these, basically somewhere between 25 and 50 a year, and we're currently not charging for that. And it just takes us basically a small amount of time to review the documents that come with it. The ones that come from Vet Biologics, it's pretty much a slam dunk. We look at the conditions under which that temporary or permanent license has been granted, and then usually everything looks good. Well, we'll go ahead and give our approval, and it's in the form of a letter sent back to the company authorizing them to sell the product for a year from that date. Any questions?
Dr. Greeley, do you feel that, are you getting, now this registration is only good annually for 1 full year?
Yes.
So you're getting repeat applications each year there for each vaccine?
Well, for a lot of them, yeah. If what Vet Biologics does is, again, basically says, yeah, they give them another conditional license, more data is needed or whatever, then they'll back to us and they'll, again, ask for another license to continue to distribute the product. I really don't know as far as ones that have full licensure. We only get a few of those, and obviously there's many more products distributed in the state than just the few we get. And I guess then the question comes up, do we want to require licenses on those? If we do, then do we want to charge for it? Because obviously we're probably talking about hundreds or probably thousands of products that would then need to be, we'd have to have somebody on staff to probably administer that. I don't think we can do it with our current staff.
With biologics, then, that would be through the USDA. You're saying that you don't go through the registration process for fully federally licensed USDA biologics?
We have a few. If a company requests it and provides us with the information, and they've asked for a letter, we'll basically, we give it to them. But like I said, in the last 12 months, I could only find 5 of those we did. And obviously, there's many, many times more product out than that. So if a company comes to us, and maybe it's their policy that they, even with their licensed products, they do it with every state, we would go ahead and approve the use here.
Okay, this was, on the biologic, the Food Safety Modernization Act that has been passed, to me was, the crux of it was for the use of antibiotics and the possibility of antibiotics getting back into the food supply and therefore into the human consumption. And therefore, resulting in theoretically having more susceptibility or a diminished susceptibility of bacteria to that particular antibiotic. That's the basis for that act, federally.
Right.
But in true federal fashion, they expanded it way beyond the intent and my feeling any serviceability to the industry or to the public's safety. Biologics are not something that's going to cause diminished susceptibility to antibiotics in any way, shape, or form. Biologics are vaccines.
No, in fact, they should actually decrease the use of antibiotics by keeping the animals healthy.
So my point, even at the legislature was that this is an overreach by the federal government, and that's by backing up, and we just talked about backing up from having very specific state statute in regards to FSMA. I felt that this was part of that overreach, and it really surprised me when I found that we're already registering these types of products. And in my mind, if we go to a full registration process, for one thing, it's already gone through extensive federal testing requirements in order to be licensed at the federal level, all these vaccines. So, I mean, who are we in the state of Nevada? I don't know if they haven't done a good enough job at the federal level. Secondly, in my mind, in Nevada, we think we're a big cowboy state. Our cattle numbers are minimal compared to most other states. And we're not a whole lot different than New Jersey, as far as total numbers are concerned. So, we're a small market. And so if you have a big, or not necessarily a big company, they'll want to sell stuff in here, and if they can get it registered at a reasonable price, they'll go ahead and register. But a small manufacturer that has a very specific product that has applicability in the state of Nevada, and it's a small market, they may not go through the process of registering. And therefore, you could probably get your hands on it somewhere, but it wouldn't be legal to be used in the state of Nevada. And so we're talking about biologics, we're not talking about antibiotics. So to me, it's such a major overreach of the intent of that federal law. And that's why we pushed to have a very generic statute to go through the legislature, so it gave this board the ability to incrementally
To implement or not
implement or non-implement as we see fit, and as we're being prodded by the feds, of course, we have to do some things. But this is the very area that I felt that we probably didn't need to be messing with. So, and it's surprising when I found that we were already doing some of it, even though not on a mandatory or a fee-based situation. But I was quite surprised. That's why I asked to have a background as to what we're doing.
Yeah. To clarify, that's by request of the companies, right?
That's correct. And for the most part,
Asking us to register them. And why are they doing that, Mike?
well, in the most part, I think it's because these vaccines, most of the ones that we are approving are either have a conditional license where they're gathering more information about efficacy, or maybe even, pre-licensing. And so I think in those cases, because they're not fully licensed, I think they probably do it to cover their liability. As far as the few that are licensed, I don't know why they do it.
That would seem appropriate if it is a pre-licensing situation. But fully federally approved licensed products, I just can't see the need for that. I'm having a tough time.
Yeah, I agree.
Are there some of them that we could just refuse to license?
Well, I guess you could, but why? If it's just a handful and it doesn't create a burden on us to do it, we're just approving it.
If the board directs us to not do it, we not do it.
Yeah. One of the things is that
it just surprised me when I found out that we were already doing some of the stuff that I was testified in the legislature saying that's a distinct overreach from the intent of that food safety law.
Right, and I agree with all that, but so we didn't see this as us requesting them to license. This was them coming to us saying we want to do business and we need you to do this.
Mr. Chairman.
Example.
Boyd, let me ask you this question. This one right for the record. What is your idea of a licensure and a registration process would prohibit a small company from coming into this market? So what kind of amount, what kind of layer there is it? What would be preclude them from coming into the market?
No, nothing would preclude them other than the economics of it. If you have a small company and you're doing this, as jump through the hoops to review the paperwork and then pay a fee, and they're saying, well, look, there's only 250 mother cows in the state of Nevada. It's probably, we may limit the industry's ability to get a full array of biologics in the state, is my argument.
I understand, and I don't want it to ever come to that. And the director and I, we don't wake up every day thinking, oh boy, we get to go reg. So I mean, we've never liked this from the get-go. Okay, I mean, we don't like anything about it. Our point is that either you take a hold of the steering wheel and you do something about it to steer it for your industry, or you can let the federal government drive the future.
But the thing is, my point is, if we do this incrementally, I think there's a lot of this stuff that we can legitimately argue to the federal government, to the FDA, that federally licensed products that are biologics, not antibiotics, that are biologic vaccines. I mean, it's an overreach. That's all there is to it.
The problem is, I agree with everything that you've said, and I think that the resolution that was found at the legislature was ideal, because it basically is something that the board can institute if pressure from FDA comes to a point where something has to be done. So I thought it was perfect. I thought it was perfect. We're covered if we need to be covered. We don't need to be covered. We don't have to do anything, right? It's good. But I think the conversations that you're referencing are not happening between the state of Nevada and the FDA. They're not even happening in some cases in some of the big states in FDA. They're happening with FDA and USDA, and FDA saying in the 80s, we gave you our authority on the animal disease stuff, and we've made determinations that this is causing problems in human health. And so, whether it's rational or not, we're taking back control and pushing that these things will be regulated. I mean, that's from the Association of State Departments of Agriculture. That's how it's being translated to us. That NASDA, that group, and I'm the voting member representing Nevada on that group. We voted against to prolong the implementation of FSMA. We voted against FSMA. We voted against Waters of the U.S. I mean, we continue to take those stances, and they lobby those positions that we have, and all the states are pretty much in the same spot, position there. But this is coming from those federal organizations and their authorities in those realms and being pushed down, irregardless of what we determine to be good science or bad science. I've never thought I would ever in my life hear that term so many times in so many areas as the last 4 years I've had in this job, of good science versus bad science and what that is, and depending upon who's pushing. So I agree with everything you're saying. I think we've got a way to kind of cover ourselves, but this is happening way above our pay grade. And that was even with Dr. Gogachia, the conversation I had with him was him translating a conversation he had with FDA and him saying that doesn't make sense, and that's in there.
The thing is, FDA never really had any authority over biologics. That's always been a USDA function.
You see, what I've seen and what was suggested to me is that they, as Food and Drug Authority, have the authority.
Not on biologics. On pharmaceuticals, where the actual drugs that are administered are one thing, but the biologics are the vaccines, the preventative. That stimulate the immune process in an animal has always been to the purview of the USDA.
I completely agree with you too, Boyd. It just, my feelings of it is that either we're going to decide how it's done in Nevada, or they're going to.
And that gives us board the ability to drag its feet until we're pushed to the heat of the fire.
Well, and absolutely, and the way we wrote it, and frankly, I wish when we wrote the original SB whatever, we'd have done it the way we did it with you sitting in the office there. And then it gets decided by this board. Whatever policy we decide based on FSMA gets decided by this board. And that's a conversation that you and me and Mike and Jim are going to have together, and then it's going to come forward to this board. And so whatever it is, I mean, it's going to have your stamp of approval on it, and everybody else on the board.
And I fully understand that the role of the FDA is put so much pressure that we have to do something to keep it in the state's authority. But there's so much that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
But back to this topic issue here, do you want us to try to put this on as a future board agenda to adjust the ones that were given by request of the companies, or what are you looking for? And you have time to determine that. I mean, you can put a request, 10 days out to have a topic put on a board agenda, so you got time to ponder that. But
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Just Lynn Hetrick, Deputy Director. Just a quick comment. I don't know if you guys got a copy, of your board members got a copy of the actual bill, the way we wrote the language, but the Director and Flint have clearly laid out what the thing says, and it's very short. If I may read it to you just quickly, if you don't have a copy. Section 8 of SB 488 says the department may establish by regulation a program to implement the requirements of the federal regulations regarding veterinary feed directives as defined in 21 USC and 354, including without limitation requirements for the registration of animal remedies, veterinary biologics, or pharmaceuticals, as those terms are defined in the federal regulations. So it's may, and it's all what they demand, and even if they demand it, it's still we may. So if we don't want to do it, then we don't have to do it. We can leave it to them, or we can just say we're not doing it. In terms of the suggestion, I agree totally with the Director that if you wish to impose some kind of limitation on the registration of those biologics that are coming in now, you could do it. But I think those companies are actually asking for that because they need it to be able to provide that biologic within the state and somehow limit their liability or sure that they don't have some action by the state of Nevada against them for trying to develop a product. So I think again, that it certainly can be looked at by the board, but I think that's what they're trying to do.
In the case of licensed products, it may well be it's just their standard operating procedure that they ask for permission and not a legal requirement.
Well, I know in some other states they're already required to, by state implementation, because I think, I don't know how many states, but I think one of the ones that we were referencing was Oregon.
Yeah, and then, and me and Boyd,
that may be
thoroughly, we probably shouldn't have went to Oregon, but they had a very thorough description of how they registered those products. So we ran with it, and then LCB had a heyday with it on some of their edits. So what came out was a little bit off of what we wanted. I actually prefer this method considerably because whatever we do, whether we have to or not, we make the decision. When I say that, you guys make the decision. We'll write it, and you say whether or not we should do it or not. So.
Yeah, Oregon actually put that in place. Oregon actually put that in place to deal with a budget deficit. Dr. Lee Master told me that.
Even better. From our standpoint, I hate to do anything for free, to be honest, because we're so fee-based now, and we get so little general fund. There almost has to be something that drives us. So, I cringe when we say, oh, we can absorb that, when less than 2% of our whole budget is general fund. It's pretty hard to absorb things, especially as requirements and demands come on and on. But
we're paying it though, ultimately, aren't we?
Well, in one way or another, but it's whether or not the general citizenry is paying it through those, or you're paying it through use fees, basically.
And I'm sorry if I got to keep rattling on, right for the record, but from an administrator standpoint, you got to make things pencil on this. And if there's going to be any manpower or paperwork that goes with it, there's got to be some sort of funding structure that goes with it. Or like Jim said, we're absorbing it, and I'll tell you right now, we already absorb too many things.
I have no argument with that. If you're going to do it, you've got to charge a fee for it. Absolutely. But my premise goes back even further than that, saying that this is an overreach that has nothing to do with antibiotics or susceptibility or non-susceptibility. Enough said. I'll
Paul, no.
Paul, no, for the record. Then why not just continue to do as we do, have these companies apply for that, and then we just charge them a minimal fee?
We don't do that.
But why don't we do that? If we did, then it wouldn't change the way we're doing things now, just that those companies, which are requesting the services anyway, have to pay for that service.
If we were going to charge a fee or do anything like that, we would have to bring that as an official reg proposal to you guys. And if we're not required to do it, I'd rather just not do it and even go through the process of putting the fee together to, let's focus more on the things that we're regulatorily required to do currently. Again, we'll have time before the next meeting for you guys to, if you ponder this some more and decide you want us to pursue it in one direction or another, we can put it on the next agenda.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Lynn Hefrick again, Deputy Director. The regulations that are attached to this should be in your book. It's a single page and it applies only to commercial feeds. It does not apply to any biologic or veterinary product or anything else listed in the first part of SB 488 because the way the law was written that I just read to you, it says pursuant to the federal regulations regarding those veterinary feed directives, and the feed directives aren't out yet. So we can't write a reg, and we are not affecting in any way the registration or the non-registration of any of those products with this regulation. It simply applies to the commercial feeds that are mandatory.
One of my duties, sworn duties as your chairman is to bring you all back to reality. We have already approved what we're going to approve. This was an update from Flint, and all of a sudden now it's turned into, should we approve it or not? I'm like, let's make a motion and get out of here.
Yeah,
We don't have anything to approve.
no, there's nothing proof, it's simply an update, so.
Way to go, boy.
Appreciate it. A good update, wasn't
I
it?
do. I do. But you are so good at it that I'm sitting here. You even fooled the chairman. Mr. Wright, do you have anything more to report?
No, not unless there's something, somebody wants me to talk to.
We'll be available for questions at the Star afterwards.
We can have some off-the-record
Okay.
discussions.
Since Flint is done, that takes us back to item 10, and let's go right to the pollinator plan, right, Don? Where's
And
Mr.
Brian actually requested this item.
Brian?
Yeah, Chuck Moses is gonna give the update, but Brian requested that this item be on the
Okay.
agenda.
Mr. Charles Moses, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And if you can't hear me, let me know. I'll go up to the podium.
Go up to the podium.
But yeah, go up to the podium. When your legs tire, that means you're done.
Okay. Again, greetings, NDA board members, staff, and meeting participants. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chuck Moses. I work in our Environmental Services section in the Plant Industry Division. I was asked to give a brief overview of our activities related to our pollinator protection activities. I've also asked Mr. Jeff Knight, our state entomologist, to attend the meeting. I don't think Jeff needs an introduction, but Jeff has been working with me on this issue since we started on this, and I'm glad he's been available. Let me give you a little background on the issue. Essentially, the pollinator protection activity started in 2007 after a National Research Council report which documented a significant decline of pollinators and identified some possible causes, which were pests like varroa mite, pathogens, bacterial diseases, and viruses, poor nutrition, and loss of foraging habitat. Pesticide exposure, of course, was listed as one of those possible causes. Bee management practices, long migratory routes to support pollination services, and lack of genetic diversity. Soon after this report came out, there were some highly publicized issues involving pesticides and bees. And investigations of these incidents suggested that really we don't have a complete data set to determine if pesticides are the major cause or only a cause of this colony collapse disorder, or CCD, is what they're calling this colony loss, okay? So not knowing the exact role that pesticides play in this decline, the president asked federal agencies, including EPA, to work on this issue. So in July of this year, EPA approached all states and asked them to develop state-specific voluntary pesticide management plans. And part of the reasons these are voluntary, in my mind, is that there's no real funding that goes along with the development of these plans. They basically came to states and said, we'd like to offer you an opportunity to develop a specific plan to address the issue in your state and address a plan that specifically fits the conditions in your state. So with that in mind, we had some calls from beekeepers and some other folks in the industry which essentially said, yes, we'd like to see you develop this plan. So we started working on this in July. And we're to a point where we actually have a draft that we've been circulating, and we've got a lot of good comments. I'll briefly touch on those towards the end of my presentation. Now, the thing to keep in mind is, though, this plan is voluntary. We do already have regulatory measures that are in place right now that help pesticide applicators deal with these issues and protect pollinators. The first thing is pesticide labeling. For folks that are applying pesticides that are considered to be highly toxic to bees, you will see new labeling, which essentially limits the time period when applications can be made. Specifically, most labels will prohibit applications when bees are foraging, and this has created some problems which we're trying to work on new language for specific crops like alfalfa seed and other crops that might be in bloom all the time, okay? So we have the revised pesticide labeling that identify issues related to highly toxic pesticides. The other thing that's already in place, and we do have a regulation, NAC 555470, is a regulation which essentially says if a beekeeper notifies a licensed pest control applicator of the location of his hive, if it's within 2 miles of a pesticide application site, the pesticide applicator is obligated to notify the beekeeper when he's going to treat, so that the beekeeper can take measures to protect their hives. So we do have a combination with the voluntary management plan and the regulatory provisions that are already out there to take the steps that we know can protect pollinators. And we are, by the way, we did mention about going to a workshop and hearing regarding some revisions to that specific regulation. What we're trying to do is just take out some of the old language that identifies products that no longer are being used, like Furadan, for example, and clarifying what we mean by agricultural crops. So here are the major provisions in the plan. Okay, I'm emphasizing that this is a voluntary plan. We're going to rely on plan participants to follow the provisions, especially those related to notification of beekeepers and those that have managed bee colonies. For input, we have involved over 20 stakeholders. These are growers, beekeepers, educators, county health, and mosquito abatement folks, plus pest control applicators. And we solicit comments from them so that we can incorporate those into our plan. Okay, another important thing, and one of the reasons Jeff is involved in this, is the plan is designed to protect native pollinators as well, not just honeybees. And Jeff's helped put together a list of native pollinators that we want to protect in this particular plan, so it's not just for honeybees. We wanted to make that clear. The major thing is a system for colony registration and ways to identify owners of colonies so that applicators can take steps to protect beekeepers and those folks that have managed pollinators. The final thing in that plan, and why we got involved in the first place, is the promotion of best management practices for the use of pesticides. And so we have a number of those things already that we're promoting. We're already promoting integrated pest management, encouraging folks to use preventative means, and when available, non-chemical means to control pests. And when pesticides, when we need to select the pesticide to do our job, we select a product that's considered to be low risk. So the comments we received today essentially center around improving habitat, surprisingly. Most of the comments that come in essentially tell us that, look, you should be looking at improving or expanding bee habitat. Pesticides, sure, may be an issue, but here's the real issue. It's the habitat issue. So we're going to have a section in the plan just to direct people who are interested in planting these kind of plants that are attracted to pollinators or interested in expanding or maintaining habitat. There will be a section about that, but we're just going to refer folks to other agencies that are already doing work in this area, like Cooperative Extension, Fish and Wildlife Service, Forest Service, for example. And so kind of that's where we're at right now. We have a timetable, okay? When we first started doing this, we put together a little timetable for how we were going to address comments. We started on July 13th. We went to the Northern Nevada Beekeepers Association, introduced the plan, updated EPA on our progress. We've circulated a draft among the 20 or so stakeholders that are involved in the process. We've met with the Pest Control Association and our board member that sits on the board to represent the pest control industry. We met with stakeholders in Southern Nevada, and that was on August 19th. We're going to circulate another draft on September 15th, on or before September 15th, to solicit comments and incorporate those that we already received. Revise the plan again in October 1st, and then have final revisions in November so that we can put a copy of the plan in the board packet for the board members to review and either approve or send it back to the drawing board to do a little bit of work. Now, one of the things I just want to mention is again, this is a voluntary plan. There's no regulation changes that are going to be needed except for that specific regulation that I mentioned, and we're going to workshop on September 9th to discuss those changes. So essentially, that's just kind of an overview of the plan. I just wanted to ask Jeff Knight if he wanted to add anything before I open it up to questions or move on to another subject, but that's where we're at with the pollinator plan. Want to say anything?
We're good.
Okay. Jeff says we're good, so I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Any questions here at the board? How about down there, Sparks?
No, you have a question. Sandy has a question.
Hi, Jeff. I'm Sandy with Bee Habitat. We've been having a piston contest on the news stations for a year, and I'm so happy that you're working on this and you're focusing on native pollinators as well. Are you looking into the issue of systemic pesticides like neonicotinoids? The majority of the plants, trees, seeds that you buy from any garden shop, big or small, contains these systemic pesticides that can last up to 6 years on the plant. So is that something that's going to be integrated into this plan?
Well, I defer pesticide questions more to Chuck. I mean, if they're legally used pesticides in the situation, that becomes most of our, if not all of our nursery stock comes from out of state, so I don't know if Chuck wants to.
Well, as far as the neonics go, every neonicotinoid pesticide, the one I'm more familiar with is imidacloprid, which folks are using, and essentially we're looking at ornamental plants. That's where these products are being used most frequently in our state. There's at least a page added to each pesticide label to protect bees. If you look at any neonicotinoid pesticide, there's a bee icon to alert folks to hazards associated with the use of this product, and there's specific steps that folks have to take. It's a mandatory part of the label that they have to follow when they're applying those materials.
And that's wonderful, but what about the general public who, from the goodness of their own heart, they're going to Home Depot or Moana Nursery and they're buying these pollinator-friendly plants to attract pollinators to the yard to help them. These plants have been treated with neonics that last up to 6 years. So Home Depot started labeling which of their plants at their store contain neonics. They labeled it in a way that the average consumer thinks it's a good thing because it kills aphids. It doesn't say it also kills bees. So being that Nevada is one of the 5 or 6 states in the country that can put a ban on public or private use of pesticides, is that something we can even begin to talk about, to have that conversation around neonicotinoids? There are a number of cities across the nation that are implementing bans or non-cosmetic use of that class of pesticides. Because there's so many great organizations going out and buying plants thinking they're creating something great, and all they're doing is creating a beautiful bee trap.
Well, just a couple of things real quick. It's always difficult when you're talking about educating the public about pesticide safety and pesticides. It's difficult. We rely a lot on Cooperative Extension to help us with that through their Master Gardener program. That's how we're addressing that. I was just talking to Jeff. We had an opportunity to work on our plan and look at the comments while we were sitting here waiting for our turn to speak. So I apologize for that. But we have a fact sheet that we have now that's posted on our webpage that we're planning on updating. And that would be one way that we can get information out to folks. The other thing is the data set is not complete with neonicotinoids. We're waiting for the EPA to get the data that they need to make a decision. The first time we started looking at problems with this particular class of pesticide, I was getting emails from folks saying, when are you going to cancel this? And essentially, Germany, for example, decided to discontinue the use, but now is allowing the use of that product again because In a lot of cases, it's connected to a misuse of the product. You can go to the labeling and find out where the applicator actually did not follow the label directions and cause a problem. So until we get some additional information from EPA, we're probably not going to take any additional steps, but I agree with you. We have to get the message to homeowners.
There's also some interesting data coming out from some research that's being done in other parts of the country, and it should be out pretty soon, it should be published, on the uptake of these neonics can vary all the way across the board in plants. Some plants you can put it on, and when I say uptake into the nectar or the pollen. It varies all the way across the board. So that gets to be another issue in this whole thing, is that, you know, it's really going to be up to some of these, if these companies want to not buy from, again, our point, our issue is, from the regulatory standpoint, is all these plants are grown outside of Nevada, basically. And there's one grower in Nevada, but I don't think they grow any of the major types of stuff.
You know, Jeff, let me just say, Sandy, I think we have your email, but I'd like to send you a copy of this pollinator plan, okay?
I would love to be
and
a
that's
part
a
of
good
it
comment
as well.
to submit.
I just got hired on Beyond Pesticides yesterday, so I'm no longer just a volunteer trying to do 2 jobs and help save the bees. So I want to volunteer and help. We have funding. So we just want to close on one thing, and I hear you. You have one producer in the city of Nevada that is using neonicotinoids. But the research that we did, every garden shop that we call small garden shops, they use them on a regular basis to keep their plant clean because they have this product they have to sell. So they don't need to have holes in it. So I would love to give you my email and help in any way that I could with what you're working on. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys down there in Sparks. Thanks, Charles. Okay, Dennis, do we have D to cover? Is that what you're getting ready for?
Yes.
Okay, while you're doing that, are you ready?
I'm having trouble lining this up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, just turn the projector sideways.
Like this. it really helps.
Or the plug.
Yeah.
Maybe the plug's in.
If somebody was.
Is that the full slide there?
I did AV in 8th grade. I was bad.
Yeah.
I've done the little film strips he always broke. No.
AV.
Maybe function it through the.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do, like function 8. Yeah, maybe.
And in a second, you should be able to reach over here if you want to put your laptop over here.
You know, I'm okay if it's.
So are they getting to see down there what we're seeing?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I have to ask.
I don't think so. You could ask them.
Is Len still there? I don't see a whole lot of people still hanging around.
Everyone left. Boy, they did. Look at that.
We chased everybody.
We don't even have.
You know what?
People anymore.
Can you email this really quick to Flint, and Flint can put it on his iPad, because we do have that working, and we'll move on. And
While we're doing that,
Email it to Cindy too, and she can print it out and hand it to those board members.
if they're already there, that's what we're just saying, right?
Okay.
Okay, let's do E. Board, look, preview these dates. These are the dates that Jerry has for 2016. And you know how important it is?
Jerry?
Of course, it didn't work it didn't work up here. Having a we were supposed to have a good place to meet, but.
We'll find a new spot that
We'll
we'll cancel
schedule
last
with,
minute.
well, and then for Elko, next year, we're gonna try to use the commission.
So March will be in Las Vegas, right?
Correct, that's what we're shooting for.
Oh, I thought December was Vegas.
We were, but that's what I'd mentioned earlier today. We believe that we should be getting into the building in March, and so instead of going in December and not getting to see your new southern headquarters, to delay our Vegas one to March, so that when we hold the meeting in March, we can actually host it in our new building versus.
So the December meeting will be in Sparks?
So
or
this
not?
December will be in Sparks.
Yeah, this
yes.
December.
And what day is that?
Like set to the.
That's the, what's December?
December, it's Is it?
7th's a Monday.
This,
Oh, he's looking at the new
December.
date.
Sure you send it to Cindy.
for this December? This ne- or
December
next?
Oh, it's the
2nd.
8th.
December 2nd.
Yes.
8?
December
December 2nd
Oh,
of 2015.
Ooh, okay.
And it'll be in Sparks.
That will be in Sparks.
Yes, and I think that meeting had been. So then the 2016 meeting, will that be in Las Vegas again? So we're back on the schedule? Okay, so we'll have 2 meetings next year in Las Vegas?
So,
Well, yeah,
Instead
they're
of-
two different fiscal years is the most
Yeah.
important. The calendar year is.
Yeah, okay. So for 2016, March would be Las Vegas, June would be Reno, September would be Elko, and December we'd be back in our schedule of Las Vegas again.
Okay.
Unless you guys would rather meet this December, I mean, that's up to you guys, we just assumed.
I think it's a good
I
idea.
think,
Get to go down and see the new place in March.
yeah.
To have a spot,
March.
because that was a real challenge last year, finding a spot to have the meeting.
I was gonna say, we can't change this
Right.
December and meet
Yeah.
somewhere else in
Because
Vegas.
we were at
so
the
we can't-
DMV and it was just not,
Yeah.
wasn't,
It wasn't what it was advertised.
no.
No.
It made this look like a grand ballroom.
So this is an action item, we actually have to vote on this?
For possible.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, that,
No,
yeah, we're gonna go in December, in March down to Vegas then. How confident are you that the construction's running on schedule and is that gonna take place?
You're gonna ask me that question and put me on record, aren't you, Alan?
Yeah, I was trying.
Well, I was told that construction will be completed at the end of December.
Oh, okay.
So.
You got a little bit of a cushion there.
That's why I was hedging to a March meeting.
Sounds great.
okay.
And that's why I'm telling staff, we may not get into the building until March, assuming there are delays.
And where are we gonna be in June?
Sparks.
No.
Oh, no.
Wait. So
March.
next year, 2016,
Yeah.
we're in Sparks. And then,
June 1st will be in Sparks.
yeah,
And then September 7th?
is in Elko.
Okay.
That's actually on.
And then back to Vegas on December
On
7th.
December 7th, 2016 is Las
How is
Vegas.
this gonna be any different with
Vegas?
Thinking it'll come up, it'll.
2
right
meetings in
on
Vegas?
In a different fiscal year.
We
same
go to Vegas
calendar.
That
twice.
December, next year we get back on the
On the
rotation of the
regular
December
All
Vegas
right.
meeting.
All right.
Vegas.
But it actually, what's important there is it won't
Save your
affect
money on it.
travel
Okay.
on different fiscal years. That's when we'd start seeing Dale jump up and down.
Okay, so do you want an approval of this?
Yes, please.
Take notes from one, you
Yeah, I move we approve the meeting dates for 2016.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Paris is the second. Anderson's the primary. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstention. Passes unanimous. Okay, before we go to Dennis's, while we're on meeting dates, I know it's already been pre-scheduled, but it is in Reno, but does anybody see a problem with moving the December meeting up one day to the 1st?
December?
15.
Yeah. It's Tuesday.
Oh. Tuesday's the 1st?
Here we are.
And especially for you, Jerry,
It's real simple.
because there's a whole purpose why we put these dates in a year ahead of time.
Switch your laptop
The
with
board
this.
preempts anything else that's already scheduled.
And when you wanna
with,
switch slides, you
Yeah,
just
so in the
Department of
meeting
Ag
room.
facilities, so.
Yeah, no, I
Switch
think
swipe left.
December 1st would
Just
be
hit
okay
it.
doing that.
Is that okay with the board?
So change
Wait,
this.
what
December.
happened?
I can change stuff around.
You can? Are you sure?
Yeah.
You don't have anything that far out, do you?
I got Pecan Ranch, can't put vaccinated.
You want me to do it right for you, or?
I can change that.
So it's
Okay.
December 1st. December 1st.
Thank
this
you
year.
guys very
Next
much.
meeting will be December 1st in Sparks.
Are you ready, Dennis?
I am ready.
Okay, it's all yours, bud. You've got item D.
Item D, good afternoon. I think I've been your deputy for 3.5 years, and I haven't done this yet, so it's a long time coming. Anyway, the issue, of course, is the open meeting law. I always start with the penalties and remedies because that seems to make it relevant at the front. One of the options that if an agency, a board, violates the open meeting law is my office, not me, it would be George Taylor or somebody working with him, can sue the agency to have that action declared void or enjoined. And we did that against a client. This is the only time I know of it ever happening, and that was the Nevada Tax Commission. And it was not nice. We don't like to do that. I mean, I certainly wasn't. I wasn't involved in that. I actually was representing the tax commission at the time, but I was out of the loop for the whole litigation business. A private complaint, a member of the public, a citizen can sue, or non-citizen for that matter, can sue to have an action declared void. And one of the issues, of course, is attorney's fees. I mean, you don't want to end up paying attorney's fees. That kind of eats into your budget. There are other remedies out there, including criminal misdemeanor. I honestly never heard of that happening. In lieu of that, actually, you can work with the Attorney General's office to do corrective action. That was done informally before it was given statutory authorization a couple of years ago. So now getting to the open meeting law, it's wholly statutory. Well, it's statutory. Courts have interpreted the law, of course, with any statute. It's not based on common law, is what I would say, not court-created law. You have judicial interpretations, and from time to time, Nevada courts, or the Nevada Supreme Court, will look to other jurisdictions to help in interpreting our own law. Other jurisdictions that have an open meeting law, obviously. The open meeting law deputy, George Taylor, does opinions, usually on request from an agency that can help guide you. There's also the open meeting law manual, which you can find online. I don't know if this link is still good, because they keep on changing it on me. But you can go to the AG website and find it through there. And then I give you advice. And my reason for presenting today is one of my duties is to advise my clients to help them avoid legal issues. So that's not here to do anything but that. The legislature, obviously, open meeting law, the purpose of this is to make government more open. And I think the notion is that government works better in the open than behind closed doors overall. So the open meeting law only applies to public bodies. It doesn't apply to an action by the director, for example, meeting with his staff to discuss something. It only applies to bodies that are constituted as committees, boards, etc. Supported by tax revenue, they use our office for services, that kind of thing. Including members of, not all boards are appointed by the governor wholly, some are appointed by other agencies, but that's another basis for a board being subject to the open meeting law. Subcommittees and committees formed by a board are also subject to the open meeting law, as we kind of talked about on an issue earlier today. And one way, if from time to time, you can have, like we talked about, assigning an individual. On the other hand, that individual is not subject to the open meeting law if they're delegated an duty by the board, but they cannot consult with the quorum of the board to make their decisions. So, if, for example, you assign Jim to do something, he shouldn't go talk to 4 members or 5 members of the board. No, 6 members is a quorum, right? 6 members of the board to get an idea of where he should go. That would be a quorum. So, as I said, obviously, Board of Ag must conduct its meetings in public. But, you know, unless it's authorized to close a meeting by statute, and when you do that, you announce the legal basis for closing the meeting. A meeting, you know, is a gathering of a quorum to decide a matter within the jurisdiction of the quorum or to deliberate towards that decision. I'm just giving kind of an overall definition. A meeting also includes serial discussions, and that would be, for example, an email among members of the board could create a quorum and be a public meeting. And of course, because it's an email, it's in violation of the open meeting law because it's not open. So board members should not send out emails to other board members. I would say the best way to approach it is a blanket rule, no intra-board emails, because even if you're just sending to one person, not creating a quorum, there's a possibility, and you know, hopefully it won't happen, that member will send to another, who will send to another, and eventually you could get a quorum. So the best approach would be, if you want to just get a piece of information out to the board and you don't want to have it become a deliberation process, is to send it to the director, and then if it's just sending out information, he could send it out through blind copies to all the members, and that way you don't run the risk of an inadvertent creation of a quorum. I mean, the first person had no idea, perhaps, that this would be passed along, but it could still happen. So my recommendation is do not email to other members on issues within the board jurisdiction. Obviously, outside of those areas, you guys can, you know, don't worry about it.
Dennis, I have a question.
Sure.
I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure. What about if I pick up the phone and call a few of the board members and talk to them about a board issue?
Well, if you get to a quorum, then you have a serial meeting.
So it applies the same way, whether it's an email or however.
Right. I thank you for bringing that up, because I highlight emails because I think they're kind of wild cards. They get out of, you know, they can run afoul of the rule more easily, but it could also happen in, you know, if you call one member and say, hey, let's talk about this issue. So, you know, yeah, I would recommend against talking about it in a way that, I mean, you're running the risk of an open meeting law violation if you do start talking amongst yourselves by telephone as well. Okay, deliberate was defined. This was a California case was used to arrive at the initial definition of deliberate, and it became statutory a couple of years ago. You know, weigh, reflect, just issues. It's fairly, including taking in facts. But I think the idea is the purpose is to arrive at a decision. So receiving a briefing from somebody might not be deliberation, but you know, if you're not really thinking about any kind of ultimate decision, if you're just providing information. Social functions are not meetings. So the one I mentioned before is I haven't gotten to lawyer meetings. Social functions are non-meetings. You know, if you gather together for lunch or dinner, that's a non-meeting, but you cannot deliberate. You can talk amongst yourselves, and but you cannot deliberate on an item within the board's jurisdiction. Deliberate towards a decision. So the, I'm sorry, NJLSB, I forgot to change everything. I presented to another board And I forgot to change the language here. The Junior Livestock Show Board. But anyway, the attorney non-meeting is another exception to this. It's if there's potential litigation or actual litigation involving the department or the board can meet with as long as its attorney is present to discuss that potential or actual litigation. Unfortunately, we haven't had any of that since I've been. We haven't had any litigation that we've had to meet with the board to discuss. Thankfully, I mean, we've had some litigation that got resolved a couple of years ago, but it didn't require board input. When you have a non-meeting, it doesn't have to be noticed or agendized or recorded or anything like that. So yes.
What about subcommittees? Let's say you just want to have 2 or 3 people meet on a subcommittee, like putting together a letter.
It has to meet. If it's a subcommittee picked by the board, would have to meet the open meeting law requirements. So it agendizes and holds its meeting in public and all that. Another general notion is we have exceptions in the open meeting law, but ultimately the guiding principle is what is the spirit of or letter of the chapter 241. The spirit or letter of chapter 241 is that government should be in the open. So you don't use technical means to get around the spirit of the open meeting law. So there are certain provisions that allow for closed meetings, and those actually can be requested. I mean, a closed meeting is different from a non-meeting because it has to be agendized as a closed meeting. One example would be to discuss competence of an individual, and you give that person notice. If you don't close it, they can come in and close it, and they can have an attorney present, put on evidence. So it gets kind of detailed if you have to go down that route. An important area of the open meeting law is the agenda. It must be clear and complete, and that is kind of general. I mean, what's clear and complete? I think it's really more a matter of art. There's no science to writing an agenda, but and you must follow that agenda, of course. You can't deviate from the language, as you know. And here's a case of where this actually was a case involving a non-action item, and I'm not sure if I agree with it 100%, but nevertheless, it's the Supreme Court. You kind of have to agree with what they say. Always have to apply what they say. But it applied it. It said even though an item is relevant to a topic, it doesn't mean it can be discussed if the topic doesn't adequately describe that item. And this was about I think UNLV criminal issues going on down at their campus. It wasn't noted in the topic. It wasn't something that somebody reading the topic would think would be discussed with that agenda item. So a discussion, not just action, but discussion cannot exceed the scope of the topic. And here is an example from a few years back. Discussion direction to staff and possible approval of limited guarantee pertaining to settlement and restructuring agreement. Now you hear that and you say, well, do I care to show up for that? I mean, is that important? Is that topic really important? Does it mean something to me? I mean, if you're the press, you're wondering, should I show up to cover it because it's going to be of importance to the public? Well, this topic was about the Aces ballpark. So reading that topic, you would not guess that it was about the Aces ballpark. I mean, you could guess because it was kind of around the time of that discussion. But you remember all the controversy about well, should we continue on with this ballpark? I mean, the subsidies and whatever. Should we allow it to? Should we give them a break so it will, continue as a viable, perhaps in the future viable project? But somebody who saw that agenda item wouldn't know to show up if they were concerned about the ACEs. So this is a new item, just passed this last session, that if you are going to consider a person for anything on the board agenda, you have to put their name on there. Before, it was just action against a person, administrative action against a person. But if now you're going to hire somebody, if you're going to appoint somebody, you're going to put their name on there, or if you're going to take their oath, for example, you put their name on the agenda. Contract awards, I don't know that we do much. We don't really do contracts on the agenda typically. I mean, some agencies ratify contracts as part of their role. And for possible action, you all know every action item has to have that denotation next to the item. Boards are using asterisks or bolding stuff, and then they'd have some some wording at the bottom saying that meant it was an action item, but people were getting confused, and so the legislature constantly, every session they have something on the open meeting law to address some issue, and so it's always getting tweaked here and there. Another issue that boards sometimes deal with, and we haven't had to deal with this, is to give individual notice to individuals, to persons, and I kind of mentioned this earlier. You'll let them know about it. It also applies to administrative action against somebody. You give them individualized notice. 5 working days by personal delivery or 21 working days by certified mail. I mentioned that. So this is an area, making meeting materials available is an area that sometimes I think we have to be very careful to make sure we're following this rule. I mean, we don't get complaints about this, but I think it's easy to make a mistake here, and that is to make sure you have the meeting materials to the requesters. Well, under the law, if you want to get meeting materials, you can ask the agency, give me the meeting materials, and the agency is required to give you the meeting materials at the same time, contemporaneously with when it gives it to the board members. And so you have 10 people on your list. Hopefully they've requested it by email. That way you get it to them by email quickly. But when you give it out to board members, give it out to the public who has requested it in advance. If you give out the meeting materials at the meeting, and that's what we're pretty much doing with this.
Well, they're posted online, but we do have that small list of people who request the agenda ahead of time. Is that what you're talking about? It being emailed to them?
Right. So if you're emailing it to the board members before you post it on the internet, then okay. So you're good. I think one thing we want to make sure is, I guess somebody looking at the agenda will see that the materials are available online.
Well, the agenda is in the same place as the materials.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, the agenda is posted online,
Yeah.
and
all the materials.
but it's also posted at multiple locations around the state. So,
So on the agenda, we need to say that materials are available online.
I think that would be good to add. I don't know that it's. Yeah, I think now that was that just recently we were doing it just now? We started doing them all online.
No, they've been online.
But not after the fact.
No, not after the fact. They've been there
Before the fact.
before.
So I think that would be a good addition to that. This is what happened with the Nevada Wildlife Commission, and this was totally inadvertent, but they discovered it in the middle of the meeting, and that was what happened is the person placing the supporting materials online copied just one side of a two-sided page. And so they posted that, and so every other page was missing. And that was how they got their supporting materials out to the public. It was discovered during the meeting, and this was on the bear hunt, which was highly, as you know, highly controversial. So you don't want to go forward with an action item that you know is going to be challenged by somebody who finds out about this error. Well, somebody did find out about it. But, you know, so...
So they couldn't correct it during the meeting?
No, because it had to be in advance.
In advance.
Oh, I see, okay. So I want to just clarify, so if I sent out, say, all the PDFs separately, which I don't do because that's an email nightmare, and I sent them out before they were posted online, are you suggesting those items would go out to these people as well before they're posted online?
Well, yes, if you're sending out to the board members, you should send it out at the same time to all requesters.
All requesters.
Yeah,
Only
those are just those folks on that list that we've talked about.
Which in fact would be just a link.
No, actually, you have to send them, according to the public meeting law, you have to send them the PDF of the agenda, right? Not
Well, I
just
think as far as links, if they agree to a link, I'll check on that.
Is that, you have us sending an actual attachment?
If they agree to a link, that might be within the scope of getting the materials out. For those who don't request in advance, you should have a set of materials available at each location that you present. So that's something that sometimes boards forget. So that's kind of the scope of making materials available. Let's see. So, okay. Yeah, one thing that you guys are following already, but and the local governments are required to follow is actually to have their supporting materials online. But it is not a requirement that you have them online. So if you fail to put them online, you just have to get them out through some other means. You can. Recording a meeting, you can either have it transcribed or audio recorded. And the public comment, as we all know, once there's two different ways to meet the public comment requirement. Once at the very beginning, and once at the very end. By very beginning, I mean before an action item. I mean you can have it after, like you do the oath, or what? I mean not the oath, but the Pledge of Allegiance. But it has to be before the first action item, and the last one can be towards the end of the meeting. The other alternative is to have public comment at every action item, and then have one public comment that isn't tied to an action item for people to address any other issues. So I think we kind of did a hybrid today.
I was going to say, I mean, because we've been doing it at the beginning and at the end, and then on each action item.
Right. So what you don't have to do that. I mean, some boards do that selectively on each action item. But since you announced that you're taking public comment at the beginning only on non-agendized items, then it makes sense to have that comment on each agenda item so that people can cover the universe of public comment. So that there's no.
We would be in our legal wherewithal to basically open up with one public comment on any items they want to address, go through the meeting, do our topics, and then follow up with one final public comment.
Right. Yeah, and you could.
You don't have to let them comment on each individual item, as long as you do it at the beginning and the end.
Right. Yeah, that's the case.
If you want to go down that road, and
I think that it was curious here because we had so many presentations and the public was commenting and asking the presenters. And so could the chair at the beginning of the meeting or whatever say that those are
I think you can control the meeting in that respect, limit public comment to the two options. some topics you really want to have, you know, it's your call. If you want to have you have a topic that you know people are going to be excited about, and you want to hear as close to your vote on it what they have to say, that's your option.
We have that option on individual action topics, or, I mean.
Yeah, as long as you meet the first and last rule, you can, and then you can do selectively.
So the chairman could ask for public comment on a particular action item, but not on the rest of them.
Yes, I think you can. I think it makes sense to probably announce that at the beginning. Well, I intend to take public comment on other items, and maybe identify what those items are. So if somebody doesn't want to make their public comment at the beginning, or you want them to wait till you get closer to the action item that they're going to comment on, then they know when to stay to give their comment. So you do have some, you have flexibility. There's
Does public comment, is it defined also as basically asking questions of presenters, board members, staff, that then?
There is no requirement that you answer any questions from public comment. That's you know, that's a choice that some agencies choose to make. You can discuss and ask questions. The board can ask questions of a public commenter. The board can discuss the public comment. Just remember, you can't do any action. You can't deliberate on that public comment, and you can ask questions about it. So I think you have to thread the needle sometimes, and if you're going to get into discussion of public comment with the public, to not violate the spirit of the law. If you're going to want to act on it down the road, you need to say, well, we're just ask questions and then bring it back for a topic later. So, I think we spell out the time limit for public comment on the agenda.
2 minutes.
We don't often time people, but
Right.
yeah.
That is so typical. I mean, it's not. You're not alone. I mean, everybody here is. You want to hear what people have to say. So, any other questions?
I think so.
Let me just say thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about the open meeting law, and
Thank you for keeping us in line.
Yeah, thank you.
well, always, if you have any other questions, you can always call me.
Yeah, he keeps me in line all the time on stuff.
Oh, this isn't full.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I almost broke your
You're fine, Dennis.
iPad.
No worries.
Thanks, Dennis.
Okay, do we have any questions down in Sparks for Dennis?
I think so.
Nope, very well covered.
Thank you, Dennis.
So, it looks like we have some oaths. Jim, did you bring your oath in?
Jim Snyder.
Jim?
I did not bring my oath.
But Jim can do it. He can't do the physical one, but if he sends in his oath, he's good for the next meeting.
Yeah, you're always in,
Yeah.
you serve until you're
Yeah,
replaced.
you don't actually get out.
Yeah, so, I mean, it doesn't change his,
But we can't swear him in until he has sent in that notarized oath and we have a copy
Okay.
of it. So we can swear him in December.
In December?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have Charlie, Gray, and Paul No.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Belcourt, it's all yours. Again.
I'm just pulling up the text of the oath because I don't have it.
you got it right there, Charlie has it.
I gave, yeah, they each have a copy
Well,
of it.
please rise and raise your right hand. Please repeat after me. I
I,
state your name.
Charlie Frank.
Paul No,
Do solemnly swear
Do
solemnly swear
that I will support, protect,
that I will
support and protect,
and defend the Constitution
defend the Constitution
and government of the United States
and the
and government of the United States
Constitution and government of the state of Nevada,
and the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada,
against all enemies, whether domestic or foreign,
against all enemies, whether domestic or foreign,
and that I will bear true faith,
and I will bear true faith,
allegiance and loyalty
to the same,
any ordinance, resolution, or law of any state notwithstanding.
Any ordinance, resolution, or law of any state not withholding
or withstanding.
And that I will well and faithfully perform
perform
all the duties of the office of State Office,
Member Board of Agriculture,
on which I am about to enter. So help me God.
So help me God.
All right.
All right.
We're legal again, Cherry.
All right. Looks like we've covered everything. Meeting dates, public comment. Any more public comment? Down in Sparks?
Yeah, I got a public comment here, Dave. And just because I know you guys got a long ride home, so I thought I'd drag this meeting out. But hey, just for clarification, and Jim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this audit that was done that says that the boards have public representation. If you look at the audit, they did 8 states. And only 3 of the 8 have public members on the board. And so I guess I was given the impression that all other agriculture boards have this public representation. And if you look on page 6, only 3 out of the 8, which California, New Mexico, and Oregon are the only 3 that do. And in the case of New Mexico, it's not really an ag board, it's a livestock board that they have public representation on. So, I mean, I guess I don't want the board to go away feeling like all these other ag boards in different states have public representation, because they don't. And then on page 7, it talks about, it matches Nevada up with California, Oregon, and New Mexico, and says that these are the ones that have public representation, which they do. Those are the 3 states that do. They didn't talk about the other 5 that don't. So anyway, I guess that's just my public comment. I guess I feel like I was a little bit misled there by the audit, but I'm pleased with the motion and the way everything went. I guess I was just coming away with a different point of view. Am I right there, Jim?
The auditors, and we discussed that at great extent with the auditors. The auditors' stance on that was that you either had a director that reported to the governor, which they're suggesting Nevada does not, which some of those states that are not public do have. So in other words, you had an elected official representing the public is the stance they were trying to say. Or I'm going back into the...
Okay, I understand what you're saying there. Okay.
Or the governor themselves was a member of the board, which was representing public. Or you had a public member on the board. I think some of the comparisons, and I was pretty vocal with them about this, were pretty weak. I think the New Mexico reference specifically, because the Department of Agriculture is located in the university system, they're managed, or their authority is the Board of Regents. Therefore, they're saying they're awesome because their entire Board of Regents is public members. And how would Nevada, I guess that's a preference Nevada could look at. We could report to the Board of Regents in the state of Nevada. Would that be better for the industry? I'm not so sure.
Have any biases at all.
Right, I'm not sure. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was how they benched the comparisons.
From day one, Alan, I was always very suspicious of you. To me, as a layman, it doesn't sound like an audit item. And if we're coming to political audits in this world, then I think the board should consider a letter to the governor next time, putting a stop to it. I mean, that's what it sounds like, is a political audit.
Well, what I found interesting too is the other boards, the correction board, the education, taxation, tourism, transportation, veteran services, and wildlife. There's only 3 that have a public representative on those boards. You know, so the other 5 don't. So are they getting audited and being told the same? I don't know. Just
Again, the comparison they're making is that on those other boards, the director is appointed by the governor, or the governor or the lieutenant governor is a member of the board. So they're saying that they're somehow that correlation is equal to a public member. That's what they were.
Okay.
That's what they said.
got it. Understand. Thanks, Jim.
I'm not defending it. I'm just telling you the message.
One complete is the governor actually not where they go. And so he, when we go to the audit committee, first
Preparation.
so I'm not sure where it came from. It's actually his audit actually had that same exact one. So it's just odd.
Coming around. And just one little public comment, because that's all the place we have left to do it. Reminder, if you have any questions on the iPads or anything there, feel free to contact us. We will be getting specific agency emails for each one of the board members. So you will have a vspratling@agra.nv.gov. And we will program that onto your iPad. So basically, when you're on your iPad, you'll click onto the email and it'll show up in your exchange automatically getting the email.
I really don't want it.
It'll be a one-stop shop for you.
One-stop
Yeah,
shop.
right. I have a one-stop shop.
Correct.
It's right here.
If, when you signed up the paperwork, you acknowledged that you checked out the state iPad and it's for you to take and use.
Yeah, the beauty is we don't have those giant Word packets, yeah, to go.
Yeah.
Try to
We see the tree just today.
Yes, we did today alone.
Exactly. It was either this or we were gonna all go buy you school backpacks. So it was one of the two, so we went with this.
So we can use these for our personal use as well? For our second job?
They're with you to use.
All right.
Use that.
Okay. Okay.
Jim, would it be a good idea for each of us to have an email address within the Department of Agriculture?
That's what they're going
That's
to.
what you said we're putting together for you.
Oh, I'm
We will
sorry.
have, so you'll have a cgray@agra.nv.gov.
I apologize.
I think you pretty much have to hold to tell us and tell us again.
Yeah, all good. All
That'd be the best, that you could just dump it on here.
Okay, before we adjourn,
I wasn't looking at you, boy. That's what I do.
we need to thank the IT staff and everybody
Yes.
for helping us today, because this was very daunting, keeping all 3, and then to have Jason chime in. So, all right, that's it. No other items? Motion to adjourn. I'll entertain it.
Motion to.
It's been moved by, was that Mr. Spratling?
Yeah, he's doing all.
Mr. Nose, the second. All of those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned, subject to the call of the chair.
Those that are sticking around tonight, we're gonna go to dinner at the Star